Chapter 320. Otherwise, Hu Quan would not have contracted phase that assisted the spirit craftsman's work. Lin Yuan was truly happy for Hu Quan. A person with a dream and constantly working hard for it would always succeed. When Lin Yuan had seen the crane shadow sensor that Hu Quan had carved, he had been attracted by Hu Quan's spirit craftsman skills. He had not expected that Hu Quan's spirit craftsman skills were already not at the Class 4 spirit craftsman standard. However, because Hu Quan had not comprehended the second willpower rune, there was no second fantasy breed Fey and he was stuck at the strength of a spirit chi professional. Therefore, Hu Quan was stuck as a Class 4 spirit craftsman and had been unable to become a Class 5 spirit craftsman. Hu Quan pondered for a moment and took out the contract he had signed with Lin Yuan from his diamond Fey storage box and handed it to him. He handed it to Lin Yuan and said, "Lin Yuan, I want to annul this contract." Lin Yuan's expression froze, but he immediately smiled and said, "Sure, Uncle Hu. Sure, Uncle Hu. No problem." A Class 5 spirit craftsman was already considered a big shot in the Radiance Federation. Although a spirit craftsman was not as noble as a creation master, any Class 5 lifestyle class spirit chi professional was enough to be called a foundation-level resource. Therefore, Lin Yuan could understand that Hu Quan wanted to annul the contract. At that time, the contract that Lin Yuan and Hu Quan had signed was relatively loose on the issue of staying or leaving, so it could be annulled easily. However, at that moment, Lin Yuan heard Hu Quan's words change. "I also want to stay in this mansion and become a part of it like when you and Wuxia." Lin Yuan was a little stunned when he heard Hu Quan's words. Hu Quan didn't know about his creation master abilities or Black's identity. Therefore, in Lin Yuan's opinion, Hu Quan's current decision was a little surprising. "Since Uncle Hu, a Class 5 spirit craftsman, has spoken, I'm naturally very happy to accept. It's also an honor for this mansion to be a part of it. May I know your conditions?" When Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan ask about his conditions, he immediately laughed and replied, "The conditions are still the same as before. The conditions are still the same as before. I just want to have completely jade-textured wood for me to use." Hu Quan added, "The conditions are still the same as before. Just like so much completely jade-textured wood in this month." Hu Quan could now be considered half a Class 5 creation master. As long as he obtained the Radiance Federation's official recognition, his status and prestige would be greatly enhanced. If Hu Quan was willing, he could become an honored guest of the various major powers. But in Hu Quan's opinion, it was useless. Could fame and prestige be used as countless pieces of completely jade-textured wood? It could be said that in this 1 month, Hu Quan had experienced the true happiness of the world. Not to mention the fact that the jade-textured wood was so cool to use. Just by looking at the environment of the manor's main residence, Hu Quan felt that it was not an exaggeration to describe it as a fairyland. Therefore, after knowing that he could become a Class 5 spirit craftsman, he immediately made a decision after hesitating for a while. Hu Quan decided to tie himself up as soon as possible. If other Class 4 spirit craftsmen found out that Lin Yuan had so many completely jade-textured wood to use and came over to negotiate, wouldn't he lose the initiative? Due to Hu Quan's impatience, he became a part of this manor and was also a Class 4 spirit craftsman who was about to become a Class 5 spirit craftsman. This time he did not sign a written contract with Hu Quan. There was also no need to go to the Radiance Federation to apply for certification. This time, Hu Quan used his newly comprehended willpower rune to swear an oath and accept the supervision of the will of heaven and earth. Just like that, when both Hu Quan and Lin Yuan felt that they had taken advantage of the situation, another member was added to the mansion. Hu Quan was now considered one of Lin Yuan's people. Lin Yuan pointed at the wall at the side and said, "That's right. Uncle Hu, you can add yourself to the wall as well." Hearing this, Hu Quan chuckled and said, "I've prepared all the materials. I'm just waiting for your approval before I can put myself on it." After chatting for a while, Lin Yuan asked when he didn't see Wuxia, "Where's Brother Lu?" When you said, "Brother Lu said he went out to buy groceries. He should be back soon." For some reason, when he looked at her, he suddenly felt that she seemed to have changed a lot in the past 1.5 months. He became much steadier. After speaking to them, Lin Yuan returned to his room and washed up. After washing up, he put on the spirit chi clothes that Wen Yu had prepared. He looked at the time and called Wuxia. The phone rang less than 3 times before Wuxia picked it up. "Big Brother Lu, I'm back at the mansion. When are you coming back?" Upon hearing that, Wuxia immediately replied, "I'll be home in half an hour." When he hung up the phone, Lin Yuan could clearly hear the joy in Wuxia's tone after hearing that he had returned to the mansion. On the other end of the line, Wuxia suddenly felt himself patting his arm. He looked back and found that it was Bai Hao. At that moment Bai Hao said, "Lu Jie, what happened to make you so happy? The corners of your mouth almost reached your temples when you picked up the phone." When he picked up the phone, the corners of his mouth almost reached his temples. Lu Jie had long been familiar with Bai Hao's way of speaking. Lu Jie was already used to Bai Hao's way of speaking. Bai Hao's words were as sharp as needles. Bai Hao's heart was more fragile than glass, but when the layer of glass on the surface faded, Bai Hao's heart was softer than anyone else's. This was also why Lu Jie could always be friends with Bai Hao. Lu Jie had long been used to Bai Hao's sharp tongue. "Tell me what's the matter? Hurry up and jump. I'm anxious to get home." Lu Jie felt somewhat helpless. He had come out to buy some spiritual ingredients. As a result, he bumped into Bai Hao, who had just finished a match in the tournament. When he saw Lu Jie, he asked him to accompany him to buy clothes. During this period of time, Bai Hao had been depressed because his favorite streamer, Sparrow-Voiced Lowly Goddess, had not appeared. In order to take care of Bai Hao's mood, Lu Jie agreed to accompany him. As a result, when he arrived at the clothing store, Bai Hao was as happy as ever. Lu Jie seriously suspected that Bai Hao missed the Sparrow-Voiced Lowly Goddess so much because he liked the feeling of rewarding in the live stream. Bai Hao asked, holding a pile of spiritual energy clothes. "Which one do you think looks better on me? I like so many of them. I can't possibly buy all of them." Looking at the pile of clothes, Lu Jie felt a headache coming on. How long would it take for Bai Hao to try them on one by one? Lu Jie said, "Every time you buy a piece of clothing, you will have to give one less gift to the Sparrow-Voiced Lowly Goddess's livestream. Every 10 pieces of clothing you buy will bring you closer to the second place. Every 100 pieces of clothing you buy, you will have to sit at the back of the Sparrow-Voiced Lowly Goddess's fan meet and concert." Chapter 14, End of this chapter. Chapter 321. As soon as Bai Hao heard that, he put down his clothes, grabbed Lu Jie's hand and pulled him out of the room. Lu Jie sighed. It seemed like Bai Hao was serious about this. Bai Hao really liked the Sparrow-Voiced Lowly Goddess and did not like the feeling of rewarding in the Sparrow-Voiced Lowly Goddess live streaming room. However, it was also because of this that it was more difficult. Bai Hao did not know who the Sparrow-Voiced Lowly Goddess was and only knew her singing. Bai Hao was not in the mood to shop and went straight back to his guild club. Lu Jie also returned to the mansion with the fresh spiritual ingredients he had just bought. Lu Jie had been training for more than a month and had inscribed the Hurricane Owlet Moth template with the Insect Queen's Platinum ability. This made Lu Jie confident that he could rank in the top 30 in the Radiance 100 sequence. It was even possible to say that if Lu Jie burst out with all his strength, he might enter the top 20. However, Lu Jie did not dare to guarantee all this. Although Lu Jie had become stronger in the past 3 years, how could the other Radiance 100 sequence members not become stronger? Therefore, Lu Jie did not intend to expose all his strength in this sequence ranking. It would be fine as long as he could fight for the top 30 in the Radiance 100 sequence. The change in strength during this training made Lu Jie a little more confident after knowing Black's identity. Upon entering the mansion, Lu Jie saw Lin Yuan eating fruits and drinking tea with Wen Yu and Hu Quan. Lu Jie hurriedly went up to greet them and then took the fresh spiritual ingredients to cook. After all, it was already quite late. The sun was setting in the west, and even the sunset glow had disappeared. It was replaced by faint stars that dotted the sky. Lin Yuan and Wen Yu hurriedly went to the kitchen to help, but they were driven out by Lu Jie. Not only did Lu Jie not let Lin Yuan enter the kitchen, but he also did not let Wen Yu in. Although Lu Jie was not a chef, he was more willing to turn his joy into food to share with his companions. This was the romance of Lu Jie, a man who was not very good with words. Lin Yuan hurriedly shouted into the kitchen. "Big brother Lu, cook a little more. 2 more people will come for dinner tonight." As soon as Lu Jie heard that, he came out of the kitchen and looked at Lin Yuan seriously. "How much do they eat?" Lin Yuan did not know how much Endless Summer ate, but he thought of how the mother of Bloodbath ate. "Big, very big." Lu Jie asked in disbelief when he heard that. "Does she have a bigger appetite than Wen Yu?" When Wen Yu heard Lu Jie's words, she felt as if she had been struck by a bolt from the blue. Lu Jie was really hopeless. Lin Yuan was still more normal. At that moment, Lu Jie heard Lin Yuan's voice. "Even if Wen Yu can eat 4 bowls of rice in one meal, she can't eat half of the amount of food that one of the people who came for dinner tonight can eat." Lu Jie calculated his appetite and went back to the kitchen to cook. When Wen Yu heard his words, she felt that the lightning that had struck her head had turned and struck back into the sky. Then a thunderstorm descended from the sky. What did it mean to be able to eat 4 bowls of rice in one meal? Wen Yu could not help but sigh in her heart. It was fine that Lu Jie was a straight man, but even his young master Lin Yuan was a straight man. However, a question popped up in Wen Yu's mind. When did I eat 4 bowls of rice? At most, he had only eaten 3.5 bowls. Wuxia went into the kitchen to cook. In a short while, the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer returned to the mansion. This time, the mother of Bloodbath did not immediately transform into its spider form and lie on the roof beam. On one hand, it was because Endless Summer had also come to the mansion. On the other hand, although everyone in the mansion was already familiar with the mother of Bloodbath, the people in the mansion did not know the mother of Bloodbath. Except for when the mother of Bloodbath had transformed into its human form and sent Lin Yuan back when he had fainted, it had appeared once. Normally, the mother of Bloodbath had no sense of presence in the mansion. After such a long time they should get to know each other. When the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer came in, Wen Yu and Hu Quan immediately went forward to greet them. Even Lu Jie, who was cooking in the kitchen, poked his head out and greeted them. However, Lin Yuan could clearly feel a sense of restraint from Endless Summer and the mother of Bloodbath. It was like a guest who had just come to someone else's house and was a little reserved when meeting the host. This was really not the style of suzerain/myth breed experts like the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer. Lin Yuan knew that whether it was the mother of Bloodbath or Endless Summer, they could already transform into human form. However, it had not been long since they could transform into human form. Whether it was the mother of Bloodbath or Endless Summer, they could actually transform into human form within the past 2 months. Therefore, the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer were not familiar with getting along with humans. The mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer were not like other fays that had been contracted by humans when they were young. The mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer had comprehended willpower runes and become myth-breed fays on their own in a wild state. The mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer really did not have much experience in interacting with humans. Normally, the most direct way to solve some difficult problems was to speak with strength. However, everyone in this mansion was someone that the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer needed to get along with in the future. Lu Jie cooked very quickly. In less than an hour, the table made of completely jade-textured wood was filled with delicacies. According to Lin Yuan's instructions in advance, Lu Jie specially fried 3 large plates of chicken wings. The table was filled with sour, sweet, salty, fragrant, spicy, and everything except bitterness. This sumptuous meal seemed to have a magical power. During the meal, the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer became familiar with Lu Jie, Wen Yu and Hu Quan. Just as Lin Yuan thought that after eating, the mother of Bloodbath would once again turn into a spider and lie on the roof beam. At that moment, Wen Yu had already started to help the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer clean up the empty room. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan could not help but feel that he had been too negligent. He had always thought that when the mother of Bloodbath returned to the mansion, it would lie on the roof beam outside. This was its unique lifestyle. However, he did not know that it was just because the mother of Bloodbath was not familiar with everyone, so it lived a lonely life. However, it was not too late to find out now. The addition of the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer immediately made this mansion lively. When playing the Fey Battle Flag game at night, each party would be on one side, and the 6 parties would attack each other, causing chaos. After playing a few rounds, Lin Yuan found that no matter how they played, Wen Yu could win. Furthermore, she could consume the resources of the 5 parties with the least amount of resources and become the final winner. Chapter 15, End of this chapter. Chapter 322. When playing the Battle Flag game previously, Lin Yuan had felt that she was powerful, but she was not as monstrous as she was now. However, this also allowed him to see her ability in allocating resources from the side. Simply put, this ability was a kind of gambling ability. This gambling ability could be used in business or even a private faction's planning and operation. Lin Yuan planned to establish his own private faction. He had Endless Summer in terms of force, but he had never had a suitable helper in terms of strategy. If Wen Yu had the ability to deploy resources and plan an operation, she could completely help Lin Yuan solve a lot of problems. Lin Yuan was extremely concerned about building his own private faction. Moreover, Lin Yuan's character and way of doing things also determined that he would never be a hands-off shopkeeper in building his own private faction. Lin Yuan planned to find time to talk to Wen Yu about some ideas for building his private faction. After playing the Battle Flag game, everyone returned to their respective rooms. At that moment, Lin Yuan realized that Hu Quan did not return to his room to rest. Instead, he began to carefully carve the fine, completely jade-textured wood fragments of various colors in the living room. Lin Yuan could not help but remind him, "Uncle Hu, it's too late. Do it tomorrow. Your health is more important." Carving completely jade-textured wood would not make any noise. Lin Yuan was completely afraid that Hu Quan's body would not be able to take it if he stayed up all night. Even when Lin Yuan had been enhancing phase day and night, he had to ensure that he had 5 hours of rest every day. The body was the capital of everything. If the body collapsed, there would be nothing left. Hu Quan replied with a smile. I'll process the fragments needed for the Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer to make the wall scenery first so that they can be arranged for the wall scenery tomorrow. When Hu Quan said this, his eyes revealed a kind of warmth and deep meaning. The warmth was because Hu Quan had been alone with the spirit craftsman profession for so many years and had long been used to loneliness and solitude. But now that he had these companions, even though Hu Quan was already middle-aged, he still experienced a kind of peace at the dining table with his companions just now. Time was clear, people loved to play and laugh. No one was an isolated island. As for the deep meaning, Hu Quan had already seen that both the Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer were suzerain/myth breed phase. Both the Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer had changed their hair colors. However, Hu Quan was a king-class expert. Even if his aptitude wasn't considered high and he only had one fantasy breed Fae, Hu Quan was a king-class expert. However, he still had the necessary vision. Hu Quan felt that he could not see through Lin Yuan, but all this was not important to him. Hu Quan felt that since he had joined this mansion, it was equivalent to being on Lin Yuan's side. The moment everyone was on the same side, they had to share blessings and sorrows. Hu Quan had the awareness of being a follower. Hu Quan might not be able to help in other areas, but as long as it was something a Class 5 spirit craftsman could do, then Hu Quan would act as if no one was willing to let him do it. He returned to his room and released Genius from the spirit lock spatial zone. Lin Yuan had wanted to release Genius during the meal and let it eat with everyone. However, Genius wanted to accompany Chimey in the spirit lock spatial zone. Chimey usually gave Genius a headache, and Genius had to help Chimey solve many of its problems. However, it was undeniable that Chimey was the most important family member to Genius apart from Lin Yuan. Genius knew that Chimey was evolving, improving its quality and becoming stronger. However, Genius was not anxious about itself at all. Genius felt that it was not an ambitious spirit beast. Genius knew that even when it was ugly, Lin Yuan had treated it as a treasure. No matter how weak it was, Lin Yuan would not despise it. In Genius' opinion, it was already a cat's happiness to be able to follow Lin Yuan and Chimey. Genius usually had the habit of licking its fur, but Lin Yuan still gave Genius a bath and helped it blow dry its fine white fur. This habit was formed when Lin Yuan had brought Genius home when it was still 100 questions beast that could not even be considered a fae. After a few years, the habit had become natural. Genius no longer needed to bathe. However, as long as the conditions were met, Lin Yuan would still give Genius a bath once a month. After Lin Yuan returned to his room, he was not in a hurry to sleep. Instead, he was preparing to fight a celestial stairway duel on Star Web. After all, ever since Lin Yuan had ascended the celestial stairway, he had not fought a single celestial stairway duel. At present, Lin Yuan's celestial stairway stars were only 0 stars. Even if Lin Yuan had the celestial stairway's exclusive title and could extend the time limit for celestial stairway duels. However, Lin Yuan felt that there was no need to use this privilege. Lin Yuan originally wanted to go through the celestial stairway duel as usual. However, at that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly thought of Tian Ningning. Lin Yuan simply left a message to Tian Ningning on Star Web and said that he was going to fight a celestial stairway duel. Lin Yuan originally thought that Tian Ningning would not be on Star Web at this time, but he did not expect her to reply instantly. After notifying Tian Ningning, Lin Yuan went to the celestial stairway duel as usual. Logically speaking, if others had Lin Yuan's popularity and prestige, they would have already started live streaming on Star Web. This way they could increase attention and exposure to gain the recognition of their fans. However, even if Lin Yuan ascended the celestial stairway, he was still the same and terrifyingly low profile. Tian Ningning was not disappointed with Lin Yuan's choice. Instead, she admired him a little. Tian Ningning knew that this silver-masked youth would always choose to walk a very righteous path at all times. Along the way, he did not ask for anything and did not procrastinate. The achievements that others saw might only be 1/10 of what this youth had inadvertently revealed. Lin Yuan thought that he would be matched with a difficult opponent this time. In the end, Lin Yuan was matched with only 2 gold 4/elite phase. Lin Yuan checked his opponent's information and found that his opponent was also 0 star on the celestial stairway. He felt that since the opponent had no intention of fighting, he might as well let Chimey use the radiant body to kill the 2 gold 4/elite deer species phase. There were no waves in this duel. Lin Yuan used Black Tiger Ah Fu's tornado to destroy the parking lot. He won his first celestial stairway duel. At that moment Lin Yuan checked his identity card. Name, black, gender, male, height, 178 cm, weight, 61 kg, star tower floor, celestial stairway, 1-star spirit chi, occupation, healing type, professional, occupation, rank, C, exclusive achievement, straight to celestial stairway, ascended the celestial stairway from the star tower without losing a single match. Contracted Fae, Morbius, bronze X/legend, 1000 questions beast, bronze X/legend, Twilight Starbird, silver eye/fantasy eye, red thorn, silver eye/fantasy eye, acid corrosion, queen bee, gold eye/legend, source sand, gold eye/fantasy eye, duel record, sad face, star tower, 100 duels, 100 wins, 0 losses. 100 highest floor. Celestial stairway promotion duel, 2 duels, 2 wins, 0 losses. Celestial stairway, 1 win, 0 losses, 0 consecutive wins. 1 highest number of stars. Lin Yuan found that his celestial stairway stars and duel record had changed, and there was an additional exclusive achievement. Chapter 16, end of this chapter. Chapter 323. The opponent that Lin Yuan had just been matched with had been tossing and turning between the celestial stairway and the promotion duel. Lin Yuan had personally sent him down the celestial stairway. After seeing Lin Yuan's duel in the celestial stairway video library, Tian Ningning realized that she actually did not know how to write about this duel record. For an exclusive reporter, the real difficulty was not to write about an exciting and evenly matched duel. The real difficulty was this kind of duel that ended in a few seconds. Tian Ningning wrote the duel record in the most authentic style. Therefore, for this duel record that she did not know how to write, Tian Ningning intended to be like this duel that ended in 2 seconds. She would just write 2 words, instant kill, and that would be it. After Lin Yuan finished the celestial stairway duel, he could not help but feel a little puzzled. Was it because he was unlucky during the promotion duel and had encountered strong opponents like Chen Hongfeng and Poison Beauty? Or was it because he was too lucky after reaching the celestial stairway and had encountered duelists with strength that should not have appeared on the celestial stairway? Lin Yuan had just gone through the trial and did not intend to hone his combat skills on Star Web again. Although Red Thorn had just become a silver/fantasy breed, there was obviously no effect on a place like Star Web to increase his combat compatibility with Red Thorn. This was because Star Web and duels were not enough for Red Thorn to show the strength of the Sea of Flowers after reaching Silver Eye/Fantasy Eye. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not continue with the next Star Web duel. Instead, he withdrew his identity as Black, a combat class spirit chi professional. Then he logged onto Star Web as a creation master. Black Star Web usually only received Tian Ningning's Star Web messages. However, Lin Yuan's Star Web messages as a creation master were always in a full state. Lin Yuan could not read such a huge amount of messages no matter how hard he tried. Lin Yuan simply stopped looking at the messages from strangers. Anyway, these people came to find him for a small matter. They either wanted to buy a large number of elite spirit siphon goldfish and silver usnias. They also asked if he had extra flower brocade pearls to exchange. Of course, most of these messages were asking if Lin Yuan had any bronze/epic phase to trade. After all, nothing could attract the attention of a spirit chi professional who had comprehended a willpower rune more than a bronze/epic fae. Even if there was, it would probably only be a bronze/legend fae. If someone announced that they wanted to buy a bronze/legend fae, everyone would probably think that the person was a fool. Either that or he drank alcohol and took cephalosporin. However, at that moment he suddenly realized that someone had actually sent him a message in his friend list in the past few days. Lin Yuan's creation master status was the same as Black's, which was a spirit chi professional. There weren't many friends. Other than the braised egghead who would occasionally come and talk to him, and Zhou Jiasin who would occasionally talk to him about the store's dividends, Zhou Jiasin was the only exception. Very few people would add Lin Yuan as a friend. However, Lin Yuan found that Listen, who occupied one of his friend slots, had sent him 3 messages a few days ago. Lin Yuan clicked on it and raised his brows before frowning slightly. Listen, expert, I wonder if you can enhance contracted bronze/flawless phase and upgrade them from flawless to epic? Listen, Guru, if it's possible, I would like to ask for a chance. You can name a price as long as I can afford it. Listen, Guru, it's urgent. Please help me. Lin Yuan could feel the anxiety in Listen's message. According to Listen's message, Lin Yuan felt that rather than saying that Listen had sent these 3 messages to ask for a trade, it would be better to say that Listen had sent these 3 messages with the intention of asking for help. Obviously, Listen should have encountered some problems. Lin Yuan had previously made a deal with Listen. Lin Yuan's impression of Listen was limited to knowing that he had a high EQ and was extremely good at dealing with interpersonal relationships. Even if he reached a new group, he could quickly integrate into the group through his high EQ and become the center of attention. Just like in Lin Yuan's previous deal with Listen. Listen found that the bronze/epic Fae, the Pain Illusory Fox, that Lin Yuan had provided had comprehended an excellent exclusive skill, Spirit Loophole. Listen sent an additional cubic meter of day and night spirit silver as a thank you gift. It could be seen how much Listen cared about making friends with Lin Yuan. Now Listen had used the word begged in the 3 messages. This word was equivalent to Listen exhausting the friendly relationship that he had just established with Lin Yuan. Obviously Listen should be at his wit's end. If he wanted to buy a bronze/epic Fae on the market, it was still possible to participate in more auctions. If he could happen to buy a suitable bronze/epic Fae through bartering or auctions, it would be equivalent to hitting the jackpot. However, if he wanted to find a creation master to help him upgrade his Fae's quality from bronze to epic, he would need to find a creation master to help him upgrade his Fae's quality to epic. That was completely different from directly buying a bronze/epic Fae. Looking for a creation master to help him improve his contracted Fae's quality, at the very least, he had to be able to invite a creation master. Moreover, to be able to improve a bronze/flawless Fae to epic, it meant that the creation master had to be at least class 4. In fact, he had to be at least an intermediate class 4 creation master to be confident that he could definitely improve a bronze/flawless Fae to epic. In this world, if there were any resources that were the most scarce, it would definitely be the resources of creation masters. Otherwise, the status of creation masters would not be so respected in this world. There were not many class 4 creation masters in the entire Radiance Federation. There were less than 20 pinnacle class 4 creation masters. There were only 3 class 5 creation masters. Every class 4 and above creation master's energy was unparalleled and shocking. If a class 4 creation master wanted to take on the task of nurturing a Fae, countless factions would probably rush to contribute resources just to get a chance to improve the Fae's quality and grade. Therefore, it was not easy to invite a class 4 creation master to improve a Fae's quality from flawless to epic. Moreover, Listen did not set the upper limit of the price he could pay in this transaction. This meant that Listen did not hesitate to use all his resources to exchange for such a chance to improve the Fae's quality. Lin Yuan had a rather good impression of Listen. If Listen could pay a sufficient price for this transaction, he would be willing to accept it. Lin Yuan did not mind helping Listen. Chapter 17, End of this chapter. Chapter 324. This was because it might be difficult for intermediate class 4 creation masters to upgrade a bronze Fae from flawless to epic. However, it was a piece of cake for Lin Yuan and he could do it easily. Lin Yuan might as well just return from below. Deep Mountain Elder Lin. 3 source type items can be considered. Since Listen's message had been sent a few days ago, Lin Yuan did not expect Listen to reply to his message now. Ever since Lin Yuan had received the circular item that the Mother of Bloodbath had thrown to him, he had the idea of collecting more source-type items to store. The source-type items that the Mother of Bloodbath found strange and useless were exactly what he needed the most. The value of source-type items varied from person to person. There were no useless source-type items, only people who were suitable for them. Therefore, source-type items would always be a very precious and irreplaceable resource. In short, there was no harm in collecting more source-type items. After logging off Star Web, Lin Yuan found that Genius was already lying on its back on the bed, sleeping soundly. Lin Yuan quietly went over, pulled the quilt and covered Genius with it. Lin Yuan felt that he still did not feel sleepy. He took out the weed-like dragon's mouth orchid from his diamond face storage box, which he had picked in the depths of the endless deep forest. He was going to nurture it. He took out the normal dragon's mouth orchid that he had picked in the depths of the endless forest. Lin Yuan looked at it for a moment and found that he really could not see that it was an orchid Fae without using Morbius True Data. This was because most orchid Faes were no different from weeds when they did not bloom at normal. This dragon's mouth orchid was not much different from the white jade snow orchid that Lin Yuan had obtained previously. It was a normal Fae that could not bloom. If one really wanted to distinguish carefully, this dragon's mouth orchid's slender leaves had a few faint gradual patterns compared to the white jade snow orchid. The leaves were also more slender. Although orchid Faes were not special when they did not bloom, as long as they bloomed, they would live up to the reputation of being a gentleman among flowers. Among the plum blossoms, orchid, bamboo and chrysanthemum, orchid Faes were considered a relatively precious type of Fae. The white jade snow orchid that Lin Yuan had nurtured previously was not considered a superior orchid. However, the dragon's mouth orchid that Lin Yuan was holding in his hand was a rather famous species among the superior orchids. He took the normal dragon's mouth orchid into the spirit lock spatial zone. He began to circulate his spiritual power to strengthen the dragon's mouth orchid. The normal dragon's mouth orchid had been constantly increasing its quality and grade in Lin Yuan's hands. When this dragon's mouth orchid broke through to the bronze rank, within those thin and long orchid leaves that carried a gradual change in color, a thick and sturdy flower bud directly sprang out, the bud producing a large dark blue flower bud. While Lin Yuan was constantly injecting spiritual power into the dragon's mouth orchid, the huge flower bud was also constantly unfolding. When the dragon's mouth orchid was upgraded to bronze X/epic, the flower buds of the dragon's mouth orchid had already bloomed. The dark blue and bewitching dragon's mouth orchid was the size of a palm. Each dragon's mouth orchid only had one bud, and each bud only had one flower. The dragon's mouth orchid had a very unique orchid shape, just like the tongue of a dragon species fey. In the middle of the dragon's mouth orchid's flower core, there were fine scale-like woody tissues. Under the illumination of light, these woody tissues would faintly reflect light. It was as though there was a layer of dragon species fey scales on the surface. Although these scales would reflect light, they felt like velvet and were very magical. When the dragon's mouth orchid bloomed, Lin Yuan smelled a very rich fragrance that made people feel intoxicated when they smelled it. The smell of the dragon's mouth orchid wasn't actually bad, as it was simply too rich. It was so rich that it made people feel a little greasy. However, the value of the dragon's mouth orchid's flower didn't lie in whether the flower's fragrance was good or not. It was because the dragon's mouth orchid's flower could allow fays with dragon species bloodlines to stimulate their hidden bloodline. This was the reason why the dragon's mouth orchid was considered a high-grade orchid among the orchid fays. Lin Yuan didn't have the slightest hesitation and immediately broke off the dragon's mouth orchid's blooming dark blue flower from the stem. If the dragon's mouth orchid wanted to ensure that the dragon's mouth orchid would be able to awaken the fays dragon species bloodline to the greatest extent, it had to be plucked when the dragon's mouth orchid was in full bloom. Otherwise, if it was a little late, the dragon's mouth orchid's dark blue flower would wilt and lose a portion of its effects. The dragon's mouth orchid's flowering period was very short. After blooming, the dragon's mouth orchid's orchid could only bloom for less than an hour. Therefore, when creation masters nurtured the dragon's mouth orchid, they had to be very careful. Otherwise, by the time they returned from doing something else, the dragon's mouth orchid that they had painstakingly nurtured would have withered. Lin Yuan might pluck the massive dark blue dragon's mouth orchid from the dragon's mouth orchid. However, Lin Yuan didn't intend to use this dragon's mouth orchid to awaken Blackie's dragon species bloodline. This was because the higher the quality of a fey like the dragon's mouth orchid, the better the dragon's mouth orchid's effect on awakening the dragon species bloodline. This dragon's mouth orchid was condensed under the dragon's mouth orchid's epic quality, not legendary quality. Therefore, this dragon's mouth orchid's dark blue dragon's mouth orchid's epic quality could not awaken Blackie's dragon species bloodline to the greatest extent. Lin Yuan planned to keep this dragon's mouth orchid's epic dark blue dragon's mouth orchid as a resource to exchange for other resources. Most of the dragon's mouth orchids that could appear in the market were light blue, which was the dragon's mouth orchid's flawless quality. Almost no one had heard of a dark blue dragon's mouth orchid's epic dragon's mouth orchid appearing in the market. The dragon's mouth orchid's quality determined the ability of the dragon's mouth orchid's dragon species bloodline. The dragon's mouth orchid's grade determined the time it needed to bloom a dragon's mouth orchid. The dragon's mouth orchid was a fey that had extremely high requirements for spirit chi concentration. In the spirit lock spatial zone, a large amount of pure spirit chi could allow the dragon's mouth orchid to bloom another dragon's mouth orchid relatively quickly. Chapter 18, End of this chapter. Chapter 325. If a normal creation master nurtured the dragon's mouth orchid in the outside world, it would depend on the creation master's ability. If a Class 3 creation master wanted to nurture a bronze dragon's mouth orchid to bloom once, it would take about a year. If a Class 4 creation master nurtured the dragon's mouth orchid, it would take 9 months to produce a single dragon's mouth orchid. However, when Lin Yuan sensed the dragon's mouth orchid state in the spirit lock spatial zone, he found that it would take 4 months for it to bloom again even in the spirit lock spatial zone. However, Lin Yuan did not care about this. This was because he had decided to upgrade this bronze X/epic dragon's mouth orchid to legend. After the dragon's mouth orchid was upgraded to legend, it would immediately produce a dragon's mouth orchid and would not need to wait for the flowering period. Since Lin Yuan wanted to use the dragon's mouth orchid to stimulate Blackie's dragon species bloodline, he would use the best one. Therefore Lin Yuan planned to find time to nurture this dragon's mouth orchid and upgrade it from epic to legend. If the legend dragon's mouth orchid produced a dragon's mouth orchid, to what extent would it stimulate Blackie's dragon species bloodline? Lin Yuan was still looking forward to it. If he could stimulate the dragon species bloodline in Blackie's body before it became a fantasy breed, Blackie would be able to do so. Then, when Blackie became a fantasy breed, it would have more chances to undergo a racial transition due to the bloodline purification. It would allow the dragon species bloodline in its body to slowly devour the fish species bloodline and undergo a racial transition toward a dragon species Fae. Lin Yuan really hoped that Blackie could quickly upgrade its grade. This was because if Blackie could advance to a fantasy breed and quickly increase its grade, the spirit gather goldfish would be extremely valuable. Then, according to the effect of Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, it could increase the speed at which Lin Yuan's Spirit Chi Imprint accumulated Spirit Chi. It was unknown how many times Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, had helped Lin Yuan a lot. It was simply considered a great trump card for Lin Yuan. The Spirit Gather Goldfish, Blackie, was only at Bronze X/Legend, and the spiritual power that it could release at any moment was not considered a lot. If the Spirit Gather Goldfish could become a Silver/Fantasy breed, the Spirit Chi that the Spirit Gather Goldfish could store would be 10 times more than it was now. However, Lin Yuan was rather melancholic as he did not know when he would be able to comprehend a suitable willpower rune for Blackie. However, he did not intend to enhance the dragon's mouth orchid to the legend quality now. Given his current ability, it would still take him 5 days to upgrade a Bronze/Epic Fae to legend. It had been too long and he had other things to do recently. Therefore he could only delay this matter for now. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly recalled the grayish avian Fae that he had found in the endless forest. It was nearly 50 centimeters tall and had a wingspan of nearly 1 meter. With Morbius True data, Lin Yuan had already confirmed that this gray avian Fae was a crane species Fae. However, due to the crane species Fae's genetic model not being able to develop without sufficient spirit chi concentration, all of its characteristics were hidden. Based on true data, Lin Yuan was unable to identify the species of this crane species Fae. Therefore Lin Yuan summoned this crane species Fae from his Diamond Fae storage box. This crane species Fae had been sick and listless in the Diamond Fae storage box. When it was suddenly summoned, Lin Yuan could clearly feel that this crane species Fae was panicking and fearful, appearing very weak and helpless. Lin Yuan saw this little fellow trying its best to shrink its body, trying its best to reduce its presence. Lin Yuan paused what he was about to do. This little fellow was clearly nervous and afraid, but it was so weak that it could not even make more movements. Lin Yuan had also felt this deep sense of powerlessness when he had first brought Chu Ci to survive 10 years ago. However, after gritting his teeth and enduring it, Lin Yuan understood that there was no weight in this world that his shoulders could not carry. Lin Yuan circulated the spiritual power in his body and injected a large amount of pure spiritual power into this gray little fellow's body through his hands. After a long while, the dusty little guy slowly moved. Once he injected spiritual power, Lin Yuan knew how terrible the situation inside this crane species Fae was. At the same time he was secretly shocked. What kind of crane species Fae is this? It actually requires such a large amount of pure spiritual power to slowly develop the genetic model in its body. Based on this crane species Fae's current situation, it simply could not survive in nature. When this gray little fellow sensed Lin Yuan's injection of spirit chi, it weakly opened its half-squinted eyes. Lin Yuan saw that this gray little fellow's eyes were like the purest black gemstones. It might be a little dim, but it had an elegant and intelligent look. Lin Yuan reached out to tidy up the crane Fae's dusty feathers and found that there was a lot of dust and some leaf fragments between its feathers. Lin Yuan brought this crane out of the spirit lock spatial zone, just like how he had bathed Genius. Carefully, he helped the dusty little guy take a bath. Then Lin Yuan wiped the gray feathers on this little fellow's body. After Lin Yuan's cleaning, this crane Fae might still be gray, but it was much more spirited. Lin Yuan brought this gray little fellow back into the spirit lock spatial zone. He injected a large amount of pure spiritual power into this normal crane species Fae. 1 hour later Lin Yuan stopped what he was doing. This crane Fae's genetic model was seriously lacking and it couldn't be rushed. It could only be nurtured slowly. Therefore this gray crane species Fae needed to live in the spirit lock spatial zone for a period of time to slowly recover. Lin Yuan planned to nurture this crane Fae in the spirit lock spatial zone. However, just as Lin Yuan was preparing to exit the spirit lock spatial zone, he realized that this gray little fellow was actually much more clingy than Genius. Perhaps it had never experienced the warmth of being cared for. At that moment, this gray crane species Fei widened its black gemstone-like eyes and looked at Lin Yuan with a pitiful yet affectionate expression. Lin Yuan rubbed the crane species Fei's small head. He brought this crane species Fei to the cinnabar sweet osmanthus and placed it on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus branches that had green leaves. 4 crane species Feis, their bloodline evolution path was completely different from the phoenix bloodline. Chapter 19, end of this chapter. Chapter 327. At that moment, the bald skinny man Old Feng was flabbergasted. Old Song, who was as fat as a glutinous rice ball, took out his pen and switched the position of the Abyss Dimensional Rift and the Alien Insect Dimensional Rift on the proposal. The original 8 Class 2 Abyss Dimensional Rifts and 12 Pinnacle Class 1 Alien Insect Dimensional Rifts had been changed to 8 Class 2 Alien Insect Dimensional Rifts and 12 Pinnacle Class 1 Demon Dimensional Rifts. Old Song, this change is too ruthless. From the point of view of the skinny bald man, this exchange was undoubtedly equivalent to increasing the strength of low-level combat power while also increasing a large amount of high-level combat power. The terror of the Class 2 Alien Insect Dimensional Rift was not something that the Class 2 Abyss Dimensional Rift could compare to. The number of dimensional life forms was at least 5 times more. Furthermore, the low-grade combat units in the Class 1 Dimensional Rift had been changed to the strongest individual dimensional rift, the Abyss Dimensional Rift. This simple change had increased the difficulty of the test by several folds. At that moment, the bald skinny man Old Feng heard Old Song, who was as fat as a glutinous rice ball, speak in a serious tone. If we don't create a huge wave, how will we be able to find the real gold? Just as dawn was about to arrive, this plan, which only had a few words but had been hesitating for an entire night, was sent to the ordinary middle-aged man who was seated on the Imperial Court Council's 13 seats. This ordinary middle-aged man looked at this proposal for a long time. Finally, he stood up and personally made a trip to the Star Web's officials. However, everything was hidden in the morning light and no one knew about it. The blazing sun rose from the east, and the morning light shone on Lin Yuan's face. It woke Lin Yuan up from his slumber. Lin Yuan stretched his body and washed up. He then brought the half-asleep Genius downstairs. Genius only felt warm in Lin Yuan's hand and soon fell asleep again, snoring softly. Lin Yuan simply placed Genius on the water rhinoceros leather sofa in the living room on the first floor. He allowed Genius to have a good rest on the soft water rhinoceros leather sofa. Genius might have evolved into a 1,000 questions beast, but it had evolved from a housekeeping beast like the 100 questions beast. The 100 questions beast was a feline that loved to sleep. Genius had already broken through the 100 questions beast racial limit and evolved into a Bronze X/Legend 1,000 questions beast. However, he still didn't change his habit of sleeping. However, Lin Yuan realized that at this time last year, Genius could sleep for more than 16 hours. And now, although Genius seemed to be a little lazy every day, it didn't have any problems. But as long as he slept for about 10 hours he would be fine. At this time, Lu Jie had already placed breakfast on the table. Ever since Lin Yuan, Lu Jie and Wen Yu had moved into the mansion, as long as Lu Jie was in the morning, he would prepare breakfast almost every morning. Today's breakfast was honey pancakes, hot nut porridge and freshly squeezed banana milk. However, the rich aroma of the food made Lin Yuan, who had just woken up from his sleep and had an empty stomach, hungry. Lu Jie's breakfast this morning was obviously much more than before. Wen Yu, who was helping Lu Jie set the table, rolled her eyes at Lu Jie. He did not need to guess to know that Lu Jie must have asked her how much she could eat for breakfast. Lin Yuan felt that Lu Jie was simply too straight. How could he ask a girl how much she could eat in a meal? If Lin Yuan were to make breakfast, he would definitely ask Wen Yu euphemistically if 4 bowls of rice was enough to save her from embarrassment. Since Hu Quan's arrival, the dining utensils in the mansion had changed. Previously, the utensils were porcelain utensils made of ores or metal utensils made of metal spiritual materials. However, with the addition of Hu Quan, a hidden quasi-class 5 spirit craftsman, the dining utensils in the mansion had become completely jade-textured wood sculpted utensils. Lin Yuan looked at these completely jade-textured wood utensils and the honey pancakes on the utensils and could not help but sigh. Using these completely jade-textured wood utensils to hold food had a natural and refreshing feeling. It was simply the best choice. Lu Jie had seen the mother of bloodbaths and endless summer's appetites yesterday. He no longer felt that Wen Yu could eat. In the morning, Lu Jie deliberately got up half an hour earlier and baked a few more pots of honey pancakes. They were obviously prepared for the Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer. After a while, the Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer also came out of the room. The Mother of Bloodbath came out of the room and sniffed as it came to the dining table. Looking at the breakfast on the table, the Mother of Bloodbath could not help but swallow its saliva. The Mother of Bloodbath was a foodie and loved to eat all kinds of delicacies. In the Mother of Bloodbath's opinion, Lu Jie's cooking skills were much more delicious than those of the Spirit Food Pavilion's chefs. Therefore, when the Mother of Bloodbath saw Lu Jie's breakfast, it felt that it was time to leave the gourmet group. That was because the Mother of Bloodbath discovered that the delicacies recommended by the members in the gourmet group were clearly not on the same level as Lu Jie's. Lu Jie made a lot of honey pancakes and nut porridge. Therefore, the Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer could completely let loose and eat to their heart's content. After eating, Lin Yuan thought about his decision to establish a guild club and said to Lu Jie, "Brother Lu, I want to build a club-like guild. Are you interested in joining?" Upon hearing Lin Yuan's question, Lu Jie revealed an honest and heartfelt smile on his face. He quickly nodded and said, "Lin Yuan, if you hadn't asked me, I would have asked you in the next 2 days if you had any plans to establish a guild club." In Lu Jie's opinion, not only was Lin Yuan talented, but he was also very strong. Moreover, Lin Yuan also planned to compete for the Radiance 100 sequence, so there was no reason not to go to the S tournament to gallop and compete. Lin Yuan's combat style was very comprehensive, and it was not easy to define it according to convention. Lin Yuan grasped the responsibilities of healing-type Spirit Chi professionals, support-type Spirit Chi professionals and combat-class Spirit Chi professionals. It could be said that Lin Yuan's combat style was considered an all-rounder. Therefore, Lin Yuan could join any guild club in his situation. As long as he used his identity as black and expressed his intention to join a guild club. Most guild clubs would probably come to invite Lin Yuan. However, joining a guild club established by others might allow him to participate in the S tournament, but he would also lose the absolute initiative. Lu Jie felt that Lin Yuan's establishment of a guild club was undoubtedly the best choice. I have stories to prepare good wine for you. End of this chapter. Chapter 328. Upon hearing Lu Jie's words, Lin Yuan smiled brightly, revealing his small white teeth. "Brother Lu, then I'll go to the Guild Alliance to apply for the establishment of a club in the next 2 days?" Lu Jie said. "Lin Yuan, I'm going to participate in the Radiance 100 sequence ranking in 2 days. At that time I'll get a spot in the Radiance 100 sequence. At the same time, 1 Radiance 100 sequence member will be squeezed out. Therefore, during this year's Radiance 100 sequence competition, 11 sequence members will participate in the Radiance 100 sequence test." Lin Yuan nodded in response. This meant that this year's Radiance 100 sequence test was much more competitive than in previous years. The 11 members who had retired from the Radiance 100 sequence would also participate in the Radiance 100 sequence test. If they passed the competition, they would return to the Radiance 100 sequence and would not be withdrawn from the Radiance 100 sequence. This was the Radiance 100 sequences test. Every year, a few members at the bottom of the Radiance 100 would return to the sequence. Therefore, there were less than 10 newcomers who could enter the Radiance 100 sequence during the annual test. In fact, there were only 4 or 5 newcomers in a year who could enter the Radiance 100 sequence. At most, there were only 6 or 7 of them. After all, even the Radiance 100 sequence members from sequence 90 to sequence 100 should not be underestimated in terms of strength. However, Lin Yuan did not care much about this. In the controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift, he had witnessed Long Tao, Shisu, Zhao Xiaochun and Fang Duoduo's strength. Even if Lin Yuan knew that they all had trump cards that they hadn't exposed, he wouldn't be able to defeat them. However, Lin Yuan could vaguely guess the Radiance 100 sequence member's strength. He didn't dare to say that he could rank in the top 90 of the Radiance 100 sequence with his current strength. However, it was not impossible to compete for sequence 90 to sequence 100 of the Radiance 100. Moreover, the Radiance 100 sequence test would take place 2 months later. He could also use Morbius Spirit Chi condensation in the Spirit Lock spatial zone to condense Spirit Chi crystals in the limestone bowl to increase his phase grade. At that moment, Lu Jie spoke again. "This time, I plan to compete for one of the Radiance 100 sequence 20 to sequence 30 spots. I also plan to test the current strength of my old friends. If I want to establish a guild club, I can apply to the Guild Alliance after I become a Radiance 100 sequence member. At that time we can save a lot of steps and not be so troublesome." Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. Although it was not difficult to establish a guild with the nature of a club, it still required specialized personnel to inspect the venue. Moreover, they would also measure the economic level of the organizer of the establishment of a guild club, and whether it could support the daily expenses of a guild club. Only when the conditions are met will you be allowed to establish a club union. Only after the base of the club-type guild was built would there be specialized personnel to conduct a second inspection. Only after the review was successful would the name of the newly established club-like union be recorded by the union. Become a recognized club union. If the Radiance 100 sequence members applied to establish a guild club, these steps could be skipped. Lin Yuan planned to build the guild club in the empty space behind the mansion that he had reserved in advance. Therefore, it would be inconvenient if the guild alliance's people came to inspect. Since Wuxia was going to take the Radiance 100 sequence's internal assessment in these 2 days, he would wait for Wuxia to finish the assessment before directly applying. Since Wuxia was going to take the assessment in these 2 days, he obviously did not have enough time to contract the source-type cocoon of evolution and strengthen the insect queen's abilities through the cocoon of evolution. Lin Yuan did not give the cocoon of evolution, which was very suitable for Wuxia, to Wuxia first. In Lin Yuan's opinion, it would be better to wait for Wuxia to return to the Radiance 100 sequence before giving him the cocoon of evolution. At that time, this source-type cocoon of evolution would be his gift to celebrate Wuxia's return to the Radiance 100 sequence. Lin Yuan and Wuxia chatted for a while and Wuxia went to step up his training. At that moment, Hu Quan was collaging his image with the fragments of completely jade-textured wood of different sizes and colors on the wall. Lin Yuan looked at the pattern on the wall and found that the images of the Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer had already been completed by Hu Quan at some point last night. Lin Yuan could not help but hold his forehead with his hand. Did Hu Quan not sleep at all last night? Hu Quan used up the completely jade-textured wood fragments in his hand and almost pieced his image on the wall. After putting together his character image, Hu Quan stood up and straightened his joystick. He was obviously very tired. Although Hu Quan was tired, his face was full of pride and excitement as he looked at the wall. It could be seen how satisfied Hu Quan was with his work. When Lin Yuan saw Hu Quan stand up, he poured a cup of hot tea from the teapot on the table and handed it over. "Uncle Hu, have a cup of 3 treasures tea." This 3 treasures tea was sent by Mystic Moon before Lin Yuan went out for training. It was a spirit tea made from 3 kinds of phase through a special technique that could relieve fatigue and restore physical strength. The 3 treasures referred to the plum blossom, Buddha's hand, and pine nuts. The plum blossom color is not bewitching, the Buddha's hand is fragrant and clean, and the pine nuts are fragrant and full. The 3 treasures taste comfortable. Every ingredient in this 3 treasures tea was a platinum spiritual ingredient. Among them, the Buddha's hand was made from the diamond Buddha's hand flowers in the Radiance Moon Mountains Buddha's hand garden. It could be said to be a rare delicacy. Hu Quan took the 3 treasures tea from Lin Yuan, took a sip and said, "Lin Yuan, you have so many good things here. Lin Yuan, you really have a lot of good stuff here. Just this tea alone is absolutely extraordinary. When I went to visit the Class 5 Spirit Craftsman Master Fu Zhen, the tea I drank wasn't as good as this. Apart from being a spirit craftsman and making things, that old man Fu Zhen loves making and tasting tea the most in his life." Lin Yuan could not help but shake his head. For those who did not like tea, they might evaluate the quality of tea leaves based on the value of the tea. However, for those who truly love tea, everyone had their own favorite type of tea. Lin Yuan also took a sweet white glazed teacup and poured the 3 treasures tea into it. Then he used the lid to scratch the mouth of the teacup twice. When Lin Yuan took the teacup, he smelled the fragrance that leaped into his nose before it reached his mouth. Lin Yuan felt that although the 3 treasures tea's fragrance was warm, it was not his favorite tea type. Add more chapters for your little fairy. End of this chapter. Chapter 329. Lin Yuan had previously heard that the best way to eat pine nuts was to make tea. When brewing tea, a few pine nuts would be added, and a faint oil would surface from the pine nuts. The oil contained the unique fragrance of pine species phase, rosin. This could make a pot of tea rich in mellow fragrance and smooth in the mouth, allowing one to taste the melodious pine in the mountain forest. However, Lin Yuan did not like the rich taste mixed in the tea. Instead, he liked that kind of light tea. For example, he liked Kai Cha's dark dream green tea very much. At that moment, Lin Yuan saw Hu Quan drink the tea in the teacup in one gulp and smacked his lips. "I'll be going out for about half a month in the next few days. I'll use half of my life's savings to see if I can get a bronze/epic Fey." Hu Quan said this with some faint melancholy. Obviously, after comprehending the willpower rune, Hu Quan was also worried about this bronze/epic Fey. If Hu Quan did not find a bronze/epic Fey to contract, He wanted to raise the phase quality to legend. He did not know how long it would take for it to fuse with the newly comprehended willpower rune and become a fantasy breed. In this case, even if Hu Quan comprehended another willpower rune, he would still be far away from becoming a Class 5 spirit craftsman. When Lin Yuan heard Hu Quan's words, he placed the teacup on the tea table made of completely jade-textured wood. He asked casually, "Uncle Hu, are there any phase you like better?" Upon hearing that, Hu Quan raised his hand and summoned a very light dark green mantis that was nearly half a meter long. Hu Quan raised his hand and summoned a very light dark green praying mantis that was nearly half a meter long. Upon hearing that, Hu Quan raised his hand and summoned a very light dark green mantis that was nearly half a meter long. The front two scythe-shaped arms did not have barbs like his mantis phase arms. Instead they were very smooth. However, the faintly discernible cold glint on them showed how sharp this scythe was. The strangest thing was that this mantis phase abdomen was round like a small drum. Lin Yuan used true data to check the mantis species phase that Hu Quan had summoned. At a glance, Lin Yuan found that this mantis phase name was Slaying Jade Saber Mantis. Hu Quan's Jade Saber Mantis was a Platinum 6/Fantasy I Fae. Its main function was to swallow metal spirit materials into the stomach, and then turn the metal spirit materials into a special paste for Hu Quan to use. The Jade Saber Mantis could also cut metal into any shape like tofu. At the same time, it could also ensure the smoothness of the metal's surface during the cutting process. This was not only because of how sharp the Jade Severing Mantis's mantis arms were. A large part of the reason was that the Jade Severing Saber Chi's exclusive skill allowed it to freely control and change the shape of the metal. It could be said that the fantasy breed Jade Severing Saber Mantis was a fae that was very suitable for spirit craftsmen to create. After summoning the Severing Jade Saber Mantis, Hu Quan said with some nostalgia, "I have never thought of fighting anyone in my life, so my contracted phase are all to support my spirit craftsman abilities." After saying that, Hu Quan had a thought. A lustrous purple willpower rune emitting a jade-like luster flew out of Hu Quan's spiritual energy. Lin Yuan raised his brows as he looked at the lustrous purple willpower rune with a jade-like luster. He felt that the texture of this willpower rune was no different from completely jade-textured red sandalwood. At that moment, Hu Quan said proudly, "This willpower rune I comprehended is a treasure. This willpower rune that I comprehended is a treasure. Even if there are other willpower runes that are better than mine, I won't trade it. I comprehended this willpower rune from those completely jade-textured wood. It's undoubtedly a willpower rune that is very suitable for spirit craftsmen to use. You have so many completely jade-textured wood here. With this willpower rune and a wood weaving house centipede for me to contract, I'll definitely be able to use completely jade-textured wood more easily in the future." Hu Quan could not help but feel melancholy. Lin Yuan knew that Hu Quan was worried about obtaining a high-quality bronze wood weaving house centipede. Lin Yuan knew that the wood weaving house centipede was a fae that was very sought after among spirit craftsmen. Many spirit craftsmen who were compatible with insect species faes would also choose to contract the wood weaving house centipede. However, most of the wood weaving house centipedes that were contracted by spirit craftsmen were low-quality ones. Low-quality wood weaving house centipedes were not too rare in the market. 4 faes like the wood weaving house centipede that were highly sought after by spirit craftsmen. Some creation masters were willing to nurture a few of them and sell them on the market to earn money from the spirit craftsmen's pockets. It was for this reason that Hu Quan planned to try his luck with his previous savings. At that moment, Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan speak very calmly and casually. "Uncle Hu, leave this matter to me. However, I don't have a bronze/epic wood weaving house centipede." Hu Quan could not help but roll his eyes. Hu Quan thought to himself, if the bronze/flawless wood weaving house centipede is useful to me, why would I have to worry so much? At that moment, Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan speak again. "Although I don't have a bronze/epic wood weaving house centipede, I do have a bronze/legend one." When Hu Quan heard that, his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. His lips began to tremble and after a long while, he said in disbelief, "What did you just say? A bronze/legend wood weaving house centipede?" Lin Yuan nodded and replied with a smile. "Yes, I'll give it to you in 10 days. Even though Hu Quan had gotten Lin Yuan's affirmation, he still felt like he was in a dream. Although a bronze/legend fae had never appeared in the market, it was not that there were no bronze/legend faes. However, bronze/legend faes were the exclusive right of Class 5 creation masters. Even Pinnacle Class 4 creation masters could occasionally succeed. However, after these Pinnacle Class 4 creation masters nurtured bronze/legend faes, how could they let them enter the market? Previously, when Lin Yuan had taken out those completely jade-textured wood, Hu Quan felt that he could not see through it. But now, Hu Quan looked at the wood-weaving house centipede that was casually saying that he could take out a bronze/legend Fey. In that case, those completely jade-textured wood paled in comparison to this bronze/legend wood-weaving house centipede and did not deserve to be compared at all. This made Hu Quan understand how right his decision to join this mansion was. How much power did this cheerful youth contain? Could it be that Lin Yuan still had the resources of a Class 5 creation master? How much power did he have? Then Hu Quan was immediately moved. In Hu Quan's eyes, Lin Yuan was going to use that precious Class 5 creation master's resources for him. At that moment, Hu Quan could not help but feel a sense of unswerving loyalty. This feeling of a gentleman dying for a bosom friend made Hu Quan's eyes turn a little red. Hu Quan poured himself another cup of Three Treasures tea and used it to suppress his surging emotions. After Lin Yuan left, Hu Quan turned to look at the youth on the feature wall that he had pieced together and could not help but say softly, "Since you treat me as a gentleman, I, Hu Quan, will repay you as a gentleman." Although it was still not easy for Lin Yuan to enhance a bronze/legend Fey by himself. If he were to enhance it himself, it would take him about 5 days. However, Lin Yuan felt that it was worth it to enhance a bronze/legend Fey for Hu Quan. After joining the mansion, Hu Quan made an oath, which was equivalent to signing the rest of his life to the mansion. Moreover, the agreement between Hu Quan and Lin Yuan had not changed. As long as Lin Yuan could have enough completely jade-textured wood for Hu Quan to use, then Hu Quan would forever be Lin Yuan's full-time spirit craftsman. To put it bluntly, even if Hu Quan became a Class 5 spirit craftsman, he would still be Lin Yuan's tool. Lin Yuan was aware of Hu Quan's efforts. Therefore, he felt that Hu Quan could afford a bronze/legend Fey. However, after Lin Yuan promised to give Hu Quan a bronze/legend wood-weaving house centipede in 10 days, Hu Quan did not even have the chance to use it. He now had to bitterly return to the spirit lock spatial zone and start to enhance the wood-weaving house centipede. At that moment, Morbius' voice suddenly echoed in Lin Yuan's mind. Lin Yuan, the total amount of spirit chi in a spirit chi crystal is equivalent to the spirit chi that you can infuse into a Fey for 30 days. Therefore, one spirit chi crystal's spirit chi content can enhance about 5 to 6 bronze/legend Feys. You only need to crush a spirit chi crystal, and I will control the spiritual power in the spirit chi crystal to strengthen it. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan's eyes lit up. To add more rewards for the life as a passerby, there wasn't a single button left. Sweet dreams everyone, end of chapter. Chapter 330. According to what Morbius had said just now, the spirit chi in the spirit chi crystals would not be wasted. One spirit chi crystal would allow 5 to 6 bronze Feys to evolve from epic to legend. In that case, he wouldn't need to spend 5 days to upgrade a bronze Fey from epic to legend. This would undoubtedly save Lin Yuan a lot of time. Lin Yuan had never thought of using Morbius spirit chi condensation to form spirit chi crystals to upgrade bronze Fey's quality. After the spirit chi crystals were crushed, they would turn into a huge amount of pure spirit chi. If Lin Yuan controlled this huge amount of pure spirit chi and used it on a few Feys, some of it would undoubtedly leak out and be wasted. This huge amount of pure spirit chi would undoubtedly leak out and cause waste. Every bit of the pure spirit chi in the spirit chi crystals was wasted was not only equivalent to wasting Lin Yuan's time. At the same time, it was also a waste of a lot of radiance dollars and resources. This was because the spirit chi that leaked out could easily nurture many bronze/epic Feys. Although it was very easy for Lin Yuan to nurture bronze/epic Feys, every one of them would be crazily fought over by countless people. Lin Yuan had previously used spirit chi crystals to enhance his fantasy breed Feys grades. Each spirit chi crystal could help a bronze X/fantasy I Fey break through to silver I/fantasy I. Each spirit chi crystal could also upgrade a silver/fantasy breed Fey by a small grade. However, when a silver X/fantasy I Fey wanted to upgrade to gold I/fantasy I, it would consume a total of 10 spirit chi crystals. After that, each small grade upgrade from gold I/fantasy I to gold X/fantasy I would consume nearly 10 spirit chi crystals. This way, if Lin Yuan wanted to nurture a gold X/fantasy I Fey, he would need to rely on the spirit chi crystals alone. He would need all the spirit chi crystals produced by Morbius spirit chi condensation for 2 years. This period was not small. Therefore, even if Lin Yuan rigged up enough resources and tried his best to use the spirit chi crystals condensed by Morbius spirit chi condensation, upgrading Feys to gold/fantasy breed was already the limit. Although Lin Yuan had not tried to use Spirit Chi crystals to upgrade Gold X/Fantasy I phase to Platinum I/Fantasy I, he was not sure how many Spirit Chi crystals he would need to consume. However, according to his calculations, he would need to consume at least 100. In fact, 100 might not be enough. At Morbius' current grade, using Spirit Chi crystals to enhance a Fantasy Breed phase quality would increase it to Fantasy Breed phase quality. It was even harder to upgrade a Fantasy Breed phase quality from Fantasy I to Fantasy II than to upgrade it to Platinum. Therefore he used these Spirit Chi crystals to increase the grade of his phase. After raising the phase grade to a certain level, there was very little effect if he wanted to increase them further. Only when Morbius advanced to a Silver/Fantasy Breed would its exclusive skill Spirit Lock Spatial Zone change again, and its ability Spirit Chi Condensation would improve. Furthermore, it would not be easy for him to increase his rank from a C-rank Spirit Chi Professional to a B-rank Spirit Chi Professional. Lin Yuan's Chang body. Lin Yuan felt that the Spirit Chi and the Spirit Chi which he is Spirit. He is Spirit Chi A Chi Professional and Chi Professional Lin Spirit Chi Condensus Lin Yang rank. Yang that, the Spirit, Breed, Spirit, Yang Spirit Lin Yuan could feel his growth bit by bit as he increased his Spirit Chi Professional rank. However, it depended on when it could comprehend the willpower rune suitable for the blue flash purple butterfly and the spirit gather goldfish. If this progress was fast, as long as Lin Yuan could comprehend the world willpower, Morbius would become a Silver/Fantasy Breed tomorrow. However, if it could not comprehend the willpower rune suitable for the spirit gather goldfish and the blue flash purple butterfly, it could only be stuck. Lin Yuan still had a willpower rune in his spiritual spatial zone that he could use. However, he would never use a willpower rune that was not suitable for a Fae to become a Fantasy Breed. Not only would it destroy his potential, but it would also be irresponsible to the Fae that would follow him for life. Lin Yuan still had to increase his strength. However, if Morbius could control the massive and pure Spirit Chi in the Spirit Chi crystals and enhance a few Bronze/Legend Faes, it would be of great benefit to Lin Yuan's faction's development. Since Lin Yuan wanted to develop his faction into the aloof and mysterious floating cloud. Since Lin Yuan wanted to develop his faction into a proud and mysterious cloud in the horizon. Then this cloud must have the capital to float in the sky, the capital to be arrogant. Otherwise, a few gusts of wind and clouds would scatter into fog. However, since Lin Yuan had Bronze/Legend phase, this floating cloud in the sky was destined to be a cloud that covered the sky. Since Morbius could use the Spirit Chi crystals to upgrade a Bronze phase quality from Epic to Legend, it wouldn't take as long as 5 days. It would only take a while. Therefore Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to enhance a Bronze/Legend wood weaving house centipede for Hu Quan now. Moreover, Lin Yuan had already made plans for this batch of phase that could be enhanced to Bronze/Legend. Lin Yuan had planned to enhance the Dragon's Mouth Orchid from Bronze/Epic to Bronze/Legend, but he didn't dare to do so. Now he could use this Spirit Chi crystal to enhance it. In addition to the wood weaving house centipede for Hu Quan, Lin Yuan still had 3 to 4 spots. The crane species Fae with a damaged genetic model did not need to directly absorb a large amount of pure and massive Spirit Chi. Instead, it needed to be slowly nourished under this massive and pure Spirit Chi and slowly make up for the missing genetic model. Therefore Lin Yuan did not include this little fellow in the list. At that moment, Lin Yuan thought of the 3 Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carps. For a superior auspicious Fae like the Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carps, it would be better to enhance their quality to Legend. Then he would no longer suppress their grade and let them grow freely. Although this superior auspicious Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carp could represent supreme wealth by suppressing its grade to the Bronze grade after being promoted to the Legendary grade, it was a symbol of supreme wealth. However, in Lin Yuan's opinion, a superior auspicious Fae like the Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carps combined with the exclusive skill, Place of Life. The most important thing to do was to use its auspicious momentum to bless a place. In addition to the 3 Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carps, there were already 5 Faes. Lin Yuan planned to randomly choose a Bronze/Epic Fae to enhance. However, whether this randomly chosen Bronze/Epic Fae could be promoted to Legend depended on whether the Dragon's Mouth Orchid, the Wood Weaving House Centipede, and the 3 Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carps would give them a chance. Wen Yu was currently in the garden outside the mansion, accompanying her contracted Source-type Earth Surge Golden Lotus to bask in the sun. Lin Yuan originally planned to talk to Wen Yu about his idea of setting up a faction after he was done enhancing the phase. However, since Lin Yuan was not in a hurry to enhance the phase, he simply wanted to talk to Wen Yu about his plan to set up a faction. Lin Yuan admired Wen Yu's strategic ability to defeat all 5 factions in the Fey Battle Flag game last night. At that time, Wen Yu's deployment of resources and strategic ability to judge the situation had truly amazed Lin Yuan. In a sense, this kind of ability was 100 times more useful to a faction than the Creation Master's own talent. When Wen Yu, who was accompanying her contracted Source-type Earth Surge Golden Lotus to bask in the sun, saw Lin Yuan walking over, she hurriedly said, "Young Master, look at this Earth Surge Golden Lotus's lotus heart. Young Master, look. The core of this Earthburst Golden Lotus has already turned golden. It's about to reach the gold level." Lin Yuan looked and nodded secretly. It seemed that Wen Yu's strength as a Creation Master had also improved significantly recently. This Source-type Earth Surge Golden Lotus's lotus heart had turned gold and should be able to promote to gold within these 3 days. This meant that Wen Yu had reached the standard of a Class 2 Creation Master. Lin Yuan remembered that a few months ago, when Wen Yu had come out of the Radiant Moon Palace to become his assistant, she had only been an intermediate Class 1 Creation Master. She had unknowingly grown so much during this period of time. Lin Yuan stood beside Wen Yu. Under the warm sun of the early winter, he spoke of his idea of building a faction. After hearing Lin Yuan's idea, Wen Yu looked at him with an inexplicable look. She suddenly understood a saying that she did not understand before. It turned out that some people were born to belong to the sky. Wen Yu clenched her fists. At this moment, a strong gale was rising from the ground. Then it should soar for 90,000 miles. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everyone's support. Button had also written a book in the past, but he was a flop author. Writing was his hobby and had always been for self-entertainment. This book suddenly had results and many readers liked it. At first, Button was happy like a 300-kilogram fatty. Later, he slowly felt pressure, just like yesterday's explosive chapters. I've always been afraid that my readers won't like it if I write so much. I've been doubting myself. But from everyone's reaction yesterday, it seems to be pretty good. Only then did the weight in his heart fall to the ground. In fact, it had always been Button's dream to write a book that people liked to read. He could use cheap strokes to communicate with everyone that very leisurely and warm world in his heart. He could convey the little bit of beauty in his heart to the readers. It was also the readers who had always let Button have the dream of being a flop author. He suddenly felt a little emotional. He was really grateful for everyone's support. Love you guys. Then let's talk about the latest update. I owe your little fairy is mine 5 chapters of rewards and updates. I owe life as a passerby 3 chapters of rewards and updates. I owe your eyes are green. I owe you 1 chapter of rewards and updates. There are a total of 9 chapters of rewards and updates. Button planned to continue updating 3 chapters every day and then, under the premise of ensuring quality, he would release another explosive chapter of rewards and updates this week. Button would write this book properly and seriously. At the end, thank your little fairy is mine for becoming the leader of this book. Good night everyone. End of this chapter. Chapter 331. It was the beginning of winter, and it was a very ordinary noon. Lin Yuan talked about his idea of establishing a faction as he usually chatted with Wen Yu. In just a few dozen minutes, Lin Yuan had clearly explained his plans for his faction. Upon seeing that Wen Yu was listening attentively, Lin Yuan simply asked, "Wen Yu, what do you think is the most suitable path for me to take if I want to establish my own faction?" Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Wen Yu replied without hesitation, "Young master, if you want to develop your own private force, the path of accumulating resources is the most suitable." Lin Yuan nodded and motioned for Wen Yu to continue. He had only mentioned his plan to build a faction and his advantages, but he had not said his specific plan to develop his faction in the future. However, in his opinion, Wen Yu's point of view could be said to coincide with his development point of view to a certain extent. When Wen Yu saw that Lin Yuan did not directly state his position and wanted her to continue speaking, she felt a little embarrassed. Wen Yu pondered for a while and pondered for a full 5 minutes before speaking seriously. "Young master, according to the idea of building a private force that you mentioned just now, it is most suitable for us to take the best route in terms of accumulating resources. The better the resources we offer, the greater the harvest for our force. Moreover, as long as we have the most luxurious resources, no one will not want to curry favor with us. That's why we have to use the best resources to prove our foundation. Once we release our foundation, the other forces will try their best to establish a relationship with us and use their luxurious resources to exchange for the luxurious resources in our hands. We just need to make sure that we have luxurious resources that they don't have, but that they desperately want. That way we'll be able to grasp the other forces tightly and squeeze more resources from them than we're willing to pay. When Lin Yuan heard her words, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. She was indeed worthy of being the prodigal Wen Yu who had built the mansion. Her words were indeed extraordinary. However, when she expressed her thoughts in a few words, what she said about the development direction of the faction was almost completely in line with Lin Yuan's idea. In fact, when Wen Yu was expressing her thoughts, she was thinking about what had happened over the past month. Wen Yu had read the detailed information about the Radiance Federation's various factions in the Radiant Moon Palace's database and had expressed her feelings. Because she understood him, she would speak her mind in front of him. If she did not understand at all, she would not talk in front of him no matter what. At that moment, Lin Yuan's face revealed a bright smile. In fact, there were many ways to develop a private force, and not all of them were absolutely beneficial to the development of the force. However, if one wanted to develop a powerful force, then there could only be one voice in that force to make the main decisions. As for Lin Yuan's faction, he naturally had to make the main decisions. However, he wanted Wen Yu to help develop his faction as his assistant, so her voice must be consistent with his. Otherwise, even if she had a strong strategic talent in allocating resources and judging the situation, he would not let her play a supporting role in his faction's development. This was because if the two people's development routes were different and Lin Yuan and Wen Yu made different decisions, it would be equivalent to two forces. Even if these two forces wanted to pull the faction forward in one direction, the two forces would also invisibly restrain each other and divide the strength. Such development was not good for a private faction. However, based on the conversation just now, Lin Yuan knew Wen Yu's thoughts, and they happened to be in line. Then the private faction that Lin Yuan wanted to build could outline its embryonic form. At that moment, Wen Yu took a deep breath and said with a very serious expression, "Young master, how big do you want to build your faction?" At that moment, Lin Yuan took a deep breath and said with a very serious expression, "Young master, how big do you want to build your faction?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan raised his head and looked at the bright sun in the distance. The Radiance Federation is just a starting point. When Lin Yuan said this, he thought of the floating island whale that had yet to hatch in his spirit lock spatial zone. With the floating island whale, a behemoth that could build a sky city on its back, Lin Yuan's faction could not be limited to the Radiance Federation. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Wen Yu clenched her fists. She felt Lin Yuan's big picture and the magnificent waves in his heart. As Lin Yuan's assistant, Wen Yu knew that she still needed to grow. However, in the face of Lin Yuan's plan to build a faction, Wen Yu was willing to put in all her effort to help outline the outline of this grand faction. Lin Yuan was originally looking at the bright sun in the sky when he heard Wen Yu say, "Young master, I'm ready to face all the challenges when building a faction in the future." Upon hearing Wen Yu's words, Lin Yuan smiled and said, "Relax. It won't be very difficult when we build a faction." When Lin Yuan decided to build a faction, he had actually anticipated everything he would face in his heart. After just 1.5 months after experiencing the training in the controlled Class 3 Abyss Dimensional Rift, he had an additional yardstick to measure people's hearts and whether they were good or evil. Lin Yuan could completely remove the yardstick in his heart to measure whether he should do it or not. The establishment of a faction was not child's play, and it was not as simple as opening a small store on Star Web. Lin Yuan's Star Web store had always seemed to be calm and had no impact on Lin Yuan. However, it was not that no one had done anything. First, Lin Yuan's Star Web store was self-produced and did not need to worry about the supply. Second, even if others were to cause trouble, the market demand for elite spirit siphon goldfish and silver usnias was simply too great. Even if someone wanted to cause trouble for Lin Yuan's Star Web store, there was no good way. Therefore, Lin Yuan's Star Web store had been developing so smoothly and steadily. However, the establishment of a faction would have to withstand the suppression of other factions at the very beginning. If it could not withstand the suppression of other factions, it would be forced out under the encroachment and collision of other factions. Of course, these were just the problems that some ordinary factions needed to face. Lin Yuan had the ability to easily take out Bronze/Epic phase. In fact, it was not difficult for him to even take out Bronze/Legend phase. He was confident that he could make other factions become bootlickers. However, the hardest thing for bootlickers was not to think about how to bootlick Lin Yuan's faction. It was that they could not bootlick Lin Yuan's faction even if they wanted to. Today's second update, end of this chapter. Chapter 332. Take Lin Yuan's Star Web Store as an example. When Lin Yuan's Star Web Store released the news of exchanging any quality of Bronze/Epic phase for the Day and Night Spirit Silver and Source type items, the targeting from the other Star Web stores had completely disappeared. As long as Lin Yuan showed his foundation, no Star Web store would dare to take out any kind of bronze/epic phase. He would become enemies with a Star Web store that was suspected to be backed by an advanced Class 4 creation master. Similarly, as long as Lin Yuan's private faction could take out any kind of bronze/epic phase, it did not even need to take out bronze/legend phase. The other factions would crazily try to befriend it at all costs. These factions that crazily wanted to befriend Lin Yuan's private faction would think of all ways to curry favor with Lin Yuan's private faction. Some might even help Lin Yuan's private faction develop. However, Lin Yuan could only apologize to these factions. This was because Lin Yuan had already thought of his private faction's development model. Lin Yuan's development model was destined to make it impossible for these factions that wanted to befriend his private faction. After Lin Yuan took out the bronze/epic phase and traded them a few times, he understood their value even more. The greatest value of bronze/epic phase lay in their unparalleled attraction to spirit chi professionals who had comprehended willpower runes. This was because bronze/epic phase were equivalent to a better future for those spirit chi professionals who had comprehended willpower runes. Most of the powerful factions had Class 4 creation masters presiding over them. Factions without Class 4 creation masters were far inferior to those with Class 4 creation masters presiding over them in terms of foundation. These factions with Class 4 creation masters presiding over them did not mean that they did not lack bronze/epic phase. If a Class 4 creation master wanted to enhance a bronze/epic phase, not only would he need to spend a lot of resources, but he would also need a lot of time to nurture it. The Class 4 creation masters in the large factions were all worshipped and did not always nurture phase. This caused the shortage of bronze/epic phase. The king class experts that those large factions had might not be able to completely rank up to the Class 4 creation master's resources. Not to mention the other people in the faction. These major factions with Class 4 creation masters were able to attract more king class experts to join them. Therefore, these major factions had become the buyers with the highest demand for bronze/epic phase in the market. At present, there was no faction in the Radiance Federation that provided the service of customizing bronze/epic phase based on the comprehended willpower rune. Such a service that allowed one to customize a bronze/epic phase based on the comprehended willpower rune would mostly require an appointment with some Class 4 or Pinnacle Class 4 creation masters. In fact, if one wanted to make an appointment with a high class or Pinnacle Class 4 creation master, even if they paid the price, they would have to spend a lot of connections and wait for a few years. Waiting for a few years was undoubtedly equivalent to not using the willpower rune for a few years after comprehending it. However, this was something that couldn't be helped, as high-grade or even Pinnacle Class 4 creation masters had such status and prestige. If you don't like to wait, there are a lot of people behind you who will thank you for being willing to wait. This was also why Lin Yuan had sent out the news of using any species of bronze/epic phase to trade for items in the purchase with no loss store. Even if there were 3 source-type items among the items that Lin Yuan wanted to trade for, there were still so many people frantically trading for them, and the reason why it attracted so much attention. Therefore, Lin Yuan thought that since his faction's initial goal was to accumulate resources, he might as well let his faction be the first to eat crabs. To eat this crab, which was specially customized according to the different willpower rune comprehended by the spirit chi professionals, Lin Yuan didn't need any capital. This crab did not require any capital for Lin Yuan. Therefore, Lin Yuan was going to eat this crab. Not only was he going to eat it, but he was also going to eat it to his heart's content. Since he was going to eat it, how to eat it became the key. Therefore, Lin Yuan had to think about how to eat this crab in a mysterious, elegant, and pretentious manner. It was like eating a crab after breaking open the shell. If he did not even remove the crab gills and the crab heart, he would just chew the crab legs in his mouth. Although he had eaten the crab, it would be bad because of the crab gills and the crab heart. Moreover, chewing the crab legs would also lose the enjoyment and texture of eating the crab. However, if he ate it within 8 crab pieces, it would be elegant, but it would be too troublesome. Lin Yuan didn't want to be bad when eating the crab, nor did he want to affect the taste. He didn't want to eat it too troublesome. Therefore, what Lin Yuan had to do was to set up a pot whenever he wanted to eat the crab. When the pot was set up, Lin Yuan would casually add a fire, and a large number of crabs would peel off their shells and scramble to jump into the pot. After these crabs steamed themselves, they even wanted to invite Lin Yuan to eat them. This was the highest satisfaction of being a crab eater. Lin Yuan already had his own plans on how to eat the crab. Now, Lin Yuan needed to enhance the vital Fei, the Oath Lily of the Valley, for his own plans. Of course, it was not just the Oath Lily of the Valley. As a transmigrator who had lived one more lifetime than others, Lin Yuan understood the importance of quality and hunger marketing. Because of quality and hunger marketing, other factions would frantically compete for the opportunity to be a crab. Therefore, Lin Yuan could also start implementing the Fate Letter plan. At that moment, Lin Yuan suddenly felt his hand sink. When you put the watering can in her hand and said energetically, "Young master, I'll go to my room and write a proposal for you." After saying that, she hurriedly ran back to the mansion to write the proposal. Lin Yuan could not help but laugh involuntarily. Although when you had an extremely strong strategic talent in allocating resources and judging the situation, she was still a young girl and still needed to be tempered. At that moment, Lin Yuan found that when Yu's contracted source-type Earth Surge Golden Lotus was shaking its huge golden lotus-shaped flower, looking a little aggrieved. He didn't seem to understand why his contractor would abandon him here and run away all of a sudden. Upon seeing that, Lin Yuan took over Wen Yu's position and accompanied the source-type Earth Surge Golden Lotus to bask in the sun. He then regularly watered the Earth Surge Golden Lotus with the spirit liquid that Wen Yu had concocted in the spray bottle. When Lin Yuan saw that the spirit fluid that Wen Yu had concocted was almost done, he put the watering can on the side of the flower bed. At that moment, Lin Yuan had already decided that apart from the dragon's mouth orchid, the wood-weaving house centipede and the three-tailed dragon phoenix landscape carp, he was going to use the dragon's mouth orchid. The sixth Fae was the oath lily of the valley. Third watch, asking for tickets, end of chapter. Chapter 333. If he wanted to build his own faction, he would have to wait until the floating island whale hatched from the crystal eggshell. Then he would build a sky city on the back of the floating island whale. At the same time, he wanted to establish his faction's territory on Star Web. To a certain extent, Star Web could now be regarded as the Radiance Federation's second world. There might even be more things that could be done on Star Web than in reality. This was because the Radiance Federation's territory was simply too big. Even if a Diamond Fae wanted to cross between two large cities, it would take at least 2 months. If one of the two large cities was in the southernmost and the other in the northernmost, it would take at least 2 months. Therefore, it was most convenient to negotiate and trade on Star Web for some unimportant matters. It was easy to apply for a guild club in the Guild Alliance. However, if the guild club wanted to be recognized by the Guild Alliance afterward, it would be registered in the Guild Alliance to participate in the S tournament. After establishing the guild club's base, there would still be a lot of inspections. However, it was different if he wanted to establish a faction. There was no need to go through so much trouble. If he wanted to establish a faction, he just needed to prove his foundation to the Radiance Federation. This kind of foundation did not refer to wealth but martial strength. As long as one had pinnacle king-class combat power, he could apply to establish his own faction on Star Web. Establishing a faction on Star Web was different from opening a Star Web store. For example, as the Star Web store's level increased, the store's area would increase. At the same time, all the decorations in the Star Web store could be purchased in the store. It did not have to be something that existed in reality. It could be scanned through the Star Web card and placed in the store. However, if he wanted to establish a faction on Star Web, it would be no different from establishing his faction in reality. To establish a faction on Star Web, one would first need to buy a piece of territory on Star Web. The size of the territory on Star Web that was specially used to establish a faction was almost equivalent to the base of a Guild Alliance's B-class guild club in the S tournament. Factions that bought territories on the Star Web could build their own facilities in the territory. However, the setup of the faction needed to be scanned in by the Star Web card before it was allowed to be placed in the faction. Because of this, the foundation of these private factions could be seen from the construction of the territory. Furthermore, there had always been a limit to how many items could be scanned by the Star Web card and entered into the Star Web. An item, be it a Fae or a spiritual ingredient, could only be scanned by one Star Web card, and it could only be scanned once. It was precisely because of this reason that many of the newly established factions on Star Web would run over to the veteran factions. He would spend a large number of Radiance dollars to apply to scan some of the items that had not been scanned by the Star Web card and that could support his reputation. For example, some ornaments or furniture made of jade-textured wood. For ornaments or furniture made of completely jade-textured wood, no matter how much money was offered, those veteran forces would not lend them out. This was because an item made of completely jade-textured wood, which represented their foundation, was not enough for the veteran forces. On the surface, some of the newly established forces had already reached the level of veteran forces. However, the veteran powers looked down on these newly established powers. That was because these rising forces were inferior to the veteran forces in terms of foundation. To a certain extent, some of the veteran forces with deep foundations were more likely to compete with the rising forces. This was like a chain of contempt. The veteran forces relied on their rich resources and felt that the rising forces were just a group of nouveau riches gathered together. They did not have a foundation that had settled down over the years. However, they had to admit that these veteran forces were indeed stronger than the rising forces. That was because sometimes having resources could indeed represent strength. Compared to those rising forces, the veteran forces could obtain the loyalty of those king-class experts more easily. This was because those king-class experts didn't just need to consume resources to nurture their contracted phase. They also needed to comprehend willpower runes and save up resources to exchange for high-quality bronze phase. It could be said that they needed to consume a lot of resources at all times. Some of the descendants of the wealthy clans did not need to worry about the demand for these resources, but for those spirit chi professionals who had ordinary families and had to rely on themselves to work hard. If they wanted to go further after reaching king class, it was often much easier to join some veteran forces than to work hard on their own. Take the king-class expert squad that Lin Yuan had participated in for an example. This king-class expert squad did not rely on the veteran forces. Instead, a few pinnacle king-class experts huddled together for warmth. It was also because of this reason that after 2 of the squad members comprehended willpower runes, they still needed to integrate resources before they could exchange for bronze/epic phase. It could be seen that the resources that the king-class experts needed to consume and the resources that they could earn were not proportional. They needed to consume more. This was a king-class expert squad that huddled together for warmth. How could those king-class experts who were alone have it easy? Therefore, for these king-class experts who were alone, joining a veteran faction was the best choice. It was also because of this that the veteran factions often had many forces hidden in the dark. They were unlike those rising forces that liked to put all their forces in the light to attract more people to join. However, the strength of such a rising faction and a veteran faction was not absolute. Such variables could be triggered by those high-class creation masters. If a rising faction without too much foundation had the support of a Class 4 creation master, it would quickly be promoted to a veteran faction. It would slowly be recognized by other veteran factions. In any case, Lin Yuan wanted to establish his private faction on Star Web. Therefore, the first step was to purchase a piece of land to establish his private faction. Lin Yuan was not worried at all about the application for a private faction on Star Web. A pinnacle king-class expert could apply for a private faction, and it was no longer a problem for Lin Yuan. As Lin Yuan's guardian, Endless Summer was naturally considered his subordinate. As a suzerain/myth 3 Fey, Endless Summer's strength had already reached the standard of an Emperor-class spirit chi professional. As long as the application reached the standard, it would be approved. Therefore, Lin Yuan was not thinking about how to apply to establish his own private faction. Instead, he was thinking about how to arrange his private faction's territory. Chapter 1, End of this chapter. Chapter 334. Lin Yuan had a lot of good stuff in his hands, and if he was willing to take them out, he would be able to do so. If he was willing to take them out, it would not be difficult for him to arrange his faction's territory. However, Lin Yuan did not intend to spend effort to arrange the environment outside his faction's territory. Spending effort to arrange and build the environment outside his faction's territory was equivalent to wasting his time. The floating island whale had not hatched yet. If Lin Yuan prepared a large number of phase and spiritual materials to use the Star Web card to scan and use them to arrange the territory, it would be equivalent to wasting a batch of resources in his hands. It would be equivalent to throwing a batch of resources into his hands to arrange the external environment of Star Web's private territory. If the scanned items were sold, these items would also disappear from Star Web's private territory. After each transaction, the number of times the Star Web card had scanned these items would be refreshed. Since Lin Yuan wanted to build a low-key and mysterious faction, he did not need to spend effort to build the external environment of his faction. However, Lin Yuan still had to spend some effort on the internal layout of his faction. As for the internal construction of his faction, he needed to fully display his foundation. Although Lin Yuan had a design plan for the internal construction of his private territory, he only had the design plan. However, Lin Yuan only had a design plan and not the spirit craftsmanship in this aspect. Therefore, Lin Yuan needed to let Hu Quan realize the design in his mind through his superb spirit craftsmanship. Hu Quan's craftsmanship was already at the level of a Class 5 spirit craftsman and could fully undertake the arrangement arranged by Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan's private faction's operation mode on Star Web relied entirely on the fate letters. As for the fate letters, Lin Yuan chose spirit chi professionals who had comprehended willpower runes to privately customize bronze/epic phase suitable for willpower runes. Lin Yuan planned to let his private faction send out 100 fate letters through auction every 3 days. Experts, wealthy families, and even major factions would use Radiance dollars as chips to compete for these fate letters. This competition was only for the possibility of obtaining the opportunity to privately customize bronze/epic phase according to the spirit chi professionals' comprehended willpower runes. Experts, wealthy families, and even major factions who came to participate in the auction of the fate letters could only auction 1 fate letter each. After 100 fate letters were auctioned, the 100 factions that had won the 100 fate letters could use Star Web's automatic lottery function. These 100 fate letters would be randomly distributed to the 100 factions that had bought them. Among these 100 fate letters, 99 of them had black wings drawn on them. Such letters were called ash letters. The ribbon ash letters represented not obtaining the opportunity to privately customize bronze/epic phase according to the willpower runes they comprehended. Among these 100 fate letters, only 1 letter had white wings drawn on it. This letter was called an angel letter. Drawing the angel letter was equivalent to obtaining the opportunity to customize a bronze/epic phase based on the willpower rune that one had comprehended. If the faction that drew the angel letter wanted to use this opportunity, it would have to pay 3 source-type items of any choice and make an exchange oath. When the next fate letter was sent out 3 days later, he would be able to collect a custom-made bronze/epic phase based on the willpower rune that he comprehended. As of the exchange, Lin Yuan of A2 of the exchange when he needed 2 of it. As long as Lin Yuan could take out resources of the same value, the faction that had previously received the angel's letter and made an exchange oath would have to unconditionally agree to Lin Yuan's request to exchange resources. Such resources could be phase or spiritual ingredients. The exchange oath was the reason why Lin Yuan needed to enhance the Oath Lily of the Valley. The Oath Lily of the Valley was a plant that was about 30 centimeters tall and had bell-shaped white flowers on its leaves. The Oath Lily of the Valley's ability was that each of its bell-shaped white flowers could be used as a carrier to undertake the oath. Spirit chi professionals with willpower runes could directly swear to the Oath Lily of the Valley. After the Oath Lily of the Valley and the Spirit Chi professional reached an exchange oath, the original white bell-shaped flower would turn golden. The golden Oath Lily of the Valley that carried the exchange oath would fall from the Oath Lily of the Valley. At the same time, a new white Oath Lily of the Valley flower would grow at the spot where the Oath Lily of the Valley flower had fallen. At the same time, a new white Oath Lily of the Valley flower would grow at the spot where the Oath Lily of the Valley flower had fallen. This golden Oath Lily of the Valley flower, which bore the weight of the Oath of Exchange, was equivalent to proof of this. If the exchange contract was completed, the golden Oath Lily of the Valley flower would wither. However, if the exchange oath on the golden Oath Lily of the Valley flower was unilaterally broken, the Oath Lily of the Valley would unleash the curse effect that was unique to phase like the Oath Lily of the Valley. This curse effect would seal the Spirit Chi professional's willpower rune that they had used to swear the exchange oath. This was the same as the violator wasting a willpower rune that could not be used. Such a punishment was severe. Although the punishment for swearing the exchange oath was severe, it was extremely fair as long as it was not a violation. Otherwise, if everyone was customizing bronze/epic phase based on the willpower runes they comprehended, it would be too troublesome. It would be too troublesome if they had to issue an exchange oath with the faction owner every 3 days. Moreover, Lin Yuan did not have the time to stand inside his faction's territory every 3 days and wait for the buyers who had received the angel's letter to swear the exchange oath. This way, Lin Yuan would become the mailbox to receive the exchange oath. The Oath Lily of the Valley could completely take over this job. In fact, in the Radiance Federation, it was rare to use the willpower rune to swear the Oath Lily of the Valley. Could even be said to be very rare. In a certain sense, the Oath Lily of the Valley was the privilege of Class 4 creation masters. The Oath Lily of the Valley could only accept the effect of the oath when it was at legend. The Oath Lily of the Valley did not need to be at bronze to reach legend. Gold, platinum, and even diamond Oath Lily of the Valley would have the same effect when it reached legend. Therefore, for some Class 4 creation masters, it was not difficult to raise the Oath Lily of the Valley to legend when it was at gold or platinum. However, Lin Yuan did not intend to do so. He intended to nurture a bronze/legend Oath Lily of the Valley. This bronze/legend Oath Lily of the Valley was enough to represent Lin Yuan's faction's foundation. It could be said that just this bronze/legend oath lily of the valley was much more shocking than a bunch of fancy and exquisite items placed outside his private territory. This was the most direct way for Lin Yuan to express his faction's foundation to other factions. Of course, this was just a way for Lin Yuan to express his faction's foundation. With that thought in mind, Lin Yuan returned to his room and logged into the star web. He was going to purchase a wood-weaving house centipede and an oath lily of the valley on the star web to enhance them. As soon as he logged into the star web, Lin Yuan saw that he had received a reply to the message he had sent to Listen. This time, the content of the reply seemed to be even more anxious than before. Second update, asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 335. Lin Yuan found that Listen had sent 3 more messages this time. Listen, thank you for your help. Thank you so much. I just don't know when you will have time to help upgrade the phase quality. Listen, can I add another source type item and ask you to help promote those 2 phase from bronze/flawless to bronze/epic within 17 days? Listen, expert he. Lin Yuan raised his brows when he saw Listen's message, and then the expression on his face could not help but become a little playful. Based on the 3 messages from Listen, Lin Yuan could see it. Listen should really have encountered some urgent trouble. Listen wanted to get 2 chances to enhance the phase quality from Lin Yuan and upgrade them from bronze/flawless to bronze/epic. This was just a transaction and not complicated. Lin Yuan had already finalized the transaction, but Listen was willing to take out 1 more source type item. Listen had taken out this source type item in hopes that Lin Yuan could upgrade those 2 phase from bronze/flawless to bronze/epic within a certain time. This showed that Listen was very anxious to complete the promotion of those 2 phase from bronze/flawless to bronze/epic within 17 days. Otherwise, it was rare for a normal buyer to be willing to take out 1 more source type item after the seller had decided to trade. After all, source type items could not be bought with radiance dollars like 1 cubic meter of day and night spirit silver. Lin Yuan had only seen Listen's message a few days ago when he logged on Star Web last night. Lin Yuan had also logged off Star Web last night after replying to Listen. When Lin Yuan logged on Star Web again in the morning, he found that Listen had just logged off Star Web yesterday. He had immediately replied to Lin Yuan's message. Of course, Listen had only replied to the first 2 messages last night. As for the 3rd message, expert he. Listen had just sent it not long ago. There was no content like the 3rd message. It was like he was trying to find something to talk about. This greatly showed how anxious Listen was while waiting for Lin Yuan's reply. This feeling was like when you had something very urgent to do and sent a message to the other party. However, the other party had not replied for a long time, so sometimes when you were extremely anxious, you would send another message. The purpose was to test if the other party had not seen your message before. Listen had such a high EQ and ability to deal with people, so how could he not know this? Therefore, Lin Yuan knew that this would happen, which meant that Listen's heart was in a mess. Lin Yuan felt Listen's anxiety, so he did not make things difficult for him. Instead he returned. Just follow the previous transaction. I can complete the enhancement of phase quality within 17 days. There's no need to add a new source type item. After replying to Listen's message, Lin Yuan began to log on web as usual. He purchased a wood-weaving house centipede and an oath lily of the valley on the star web. The wood-weaving house centipede was not considered a cheap fey among all the normal feys. On the contrary, the normal wood-weaving house centipede was much more expensive than most other normal feys. This was due to the wood-weaving house centipede feys being favored by spirit craftsmen. As for the oath lily of the valley, it was very common on the star web. It could even be said that the oath lily of the valley's status among feys was not much different from the brocade pearl that Lin Yuan had purchased. They were the kind of things that almost no one would buy if they were put on the shelves. However, if one wanted to compare, the oath lily of the valley was slightly better than the oath lily in the market. After all, the oath lily of the valley was pleasing to the eye. In terms of appearance, the oath of the lily of the valley could be placed there as an ornament, but it was still better than the inconspicuous pearl on a brocade. The oath lily of the valley was despised because it was a healing type fey. During the healing process, it would make people want to face the pain of death. However, the oath lily of the valley was despised because it was only useful when it reached legend. The oath lily of the valley was a fey that would only undergo a qualitative change when it reached legend. There were many oath lilies of the valley for sale in the market, but there weren't many people who could upgrade them to legendary quality. Even if there were, no one would be willing to nurture them. After all, creation masters with the strength and experience were more willing to nurture combat class feys that could fight. Lin Yuan quickly placed an order for the wood-weaving house centipede and the oath lily of the valley. He just had to wait for Ostrich Logistics to deliver the wood-weaving house centipede and the oath lily of the valley. After buying the phase he needed, Lin Yuan looked at the message bar and saw Listen's reply. Lin Yuan clicked on the message and saw Listen's reply. Listen, expert, I have a total of 11 source type items here. How about you choose 6 of them that are most useful to you? Lin Yuan frowned slightly when he saw Listen's message. Lin Yuan could feel that there was a hidden meaning in Listen's words, but Listen did not directly say the hidden meaning. It was not as simple as it seemed. If Listen wanted to express goodwill and let Lin Yuan choose 6 source type items from a certain amount, it would be the number of source type items agreed upon during the transaction. Lin Yuan felt that there was nothing he could not understand. In fact, many factions would also use this method to express goodwill when trading with creation masters. Anyway, the source type items that these factions took out for trading were already useless to their faction. If they could use things that were useless to their faction to express goodwill to creation masters, it would simply be an excellent thing. After all, there were only benefits and no disadvantages to giving a good impression to creation masters. However, such factions would not say how many source type items they had, and the source type items they took out for the creation masters to choose were also integers. However, Listen directly spread out his faction's trump card in front of Lin Yuan. Listen now only had a total of 11 source type items, which was not good. All of Listen's source type item resource reserves could not be compared to some small factions at all. It could even be said that the source type item resource reserves that Listen currently had could not be called a faction. Moreover, who would hand over their trump card for no reason unless they had other plans? Listen's approach gave Lin Yuan a strange feeling. Listen didn't want to rely on me after handing over my trump card, right? Today's third chapter will be posted together from noon to afternoon. Asking for tickets, end of this chapter. Chapter 336. Just as Lin Yuan frowned slightly and was about to reply to the message, however, he did not know that Listen, who was talking to him on the other end of the star web, was also a youth. Listen might be slightly older than Lin Yuan, but Lin Yuan was a little older than him. However, Listen was undoubtedly much younger than Wuxia. At that moment, Listen was pursing his lips tightly, and the corners of his eyes revealed a deep sense of fatigue. However, the frown between Listen's brows, which had just relaxed, indicated that the burden in his heart had been lifted. Listen looked at Deep Mountain Elder Lin's message. Just follow the previous deal. The phase quality enhancement can be completed within 17 days. There is no need to add a new source type item. He didn't know why, but he felt boundless gratitude in his heart. Finally, someone was willing to help him at his most difficult moment. Listen had been looking forward to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's future in high spirits. However, he did not expect that in less than a month, fate would play such a big joke on him. Listen was the only direct descendant of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. But 3 years ago, when the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had set its development goal on the ocean, the calamity in the sea had caused the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's core members, who were also Listen's relatives, to perish in the sea. Only Listen, who had yet to reach adulthood at that time, was left alone in the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. At that time Listen, who was only 17 years old, gritted his teeth and carried the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce on his own. In the past 3 years, Listen had put in a lot of effort to revitalize the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and accumulate some resources. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce originally had 5 Class 3 Creation Masters. There was even a Class 3 Creation Master who was at the pinnacle of Class 3 and might break through to become a Class 4 Creation Master at any moment. These 5 Class 3 Creation Masters had been working in the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce for more than a decade before it had set its development goal on the ocean. Although these people were not Listen's direct relatives, they were still his uncles. In the past 3 years, Listen had spent almost half of the resources earned by the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce on this pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master. He was wholeheartedly trying to make this pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master strive to become a Class 4 Creation Master. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's Class 3 Creation Master finally succeeded in advancing to a Class 4 Creation Master. However, he did not expect that after this pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce became a Class 4 Creation Master. He took the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's remaining 4 Creation Masters and joined a veteran faction. This was a huge blow to the already weak Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Listen had originally pinned all his hopes on the Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master from his Chamber of Commerce. When this Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master became a Class 4 Creation Master, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce might even advance from a rising faction to a veteran faction with a Class 4 Creation Master overseeing it. These Class 3 and Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Masters had been the backbone of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce since Listen was young. Therefore, when Listen had been pouring a large amount of resources into this Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master and helping him break through to become a Class 4 Creation Master, he had not said anything. He wanted this Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master to use a willpower rune to swear an eternal loyalty to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Of course, even if Listen wanted to make this Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master swear, he was not qualified. Moreover, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had long set its development goal on the ocean. When it encountered a calamity at sea, it had already lost the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's top martial force. Without the protection of martial force, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce was just a fish on the chopping block in front of other factions. Had it not been for Listen racking his brains to deal with them, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce would have long been nibbled away. Listen himself was not a creation master, and the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce did not have very abundant resources when it encountered a huge change. Therefore, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce still had to rely on the 4 Class 3 Creation Masters and the Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master who had already broken through to become a Class 4 Creation Master. In fact, even a Class 3 Creation Master would not easily use a willpower rune to swear allegiance to any faction. This was because only other Spirit Chi professionals and factions in this world would use a willpower rune to swear to a high-class Creation Master. This Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master had become a Class 4 Creation Master after eating a large amount of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's resources. However, this Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master had also earned huge benefits for the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. It could even be said that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's 3 years of high-class resources had been earned by this Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master. There were times when some Creation Masters would swear allegiance to certain factions, but the Creation Masters were different. However, this kind of allegiance generally only existed for veteran factions like Wind Mist City's richest family, the Gao family, which had a huge foundation. This kind of allegiance generally had a set time limit. After reaching a certain time limit, the effect of the oath would be lifted. This was also the reason why some Class 1 and Class 2 Creation Masters were willing to pay a few years of freedom to pledge allegiance to veteran factions in exchange for a chance to grow. After the Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master of the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce became a Class 4 Creation Master, he left with the other 3 Creation Masters. This situation was equivalent to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's spring that might have just gushed out, but the spring's mouth had been taken away. Not only that, but if it was just this, the favors that Listen had made would also allow the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to tide over the difficulties. However, it was almost difficult for the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to rise again after losing its source. After this happened, Listen forcefully held on and stabilized the situation within a week. However, less than a day after stabilizing the situation, misfortune never came alone. At that moment, a veteran faction revealed its hidden venomous fangs. In fact, this veteran faction had been eyeing the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce for a long time. This veteran faction had paid a huge price to sign an exchange oath with the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce a year ago. This exchange oath was to exchange for 2 chances to upgrade a Bronze/Flawless Fey to Bronze/Epic from the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. If Listen could complete this exchange requirement, he would get a lot of resources. He would even get help from this veteran faction in some other aspects. However, if the exchange oath failed, then Listen had to agree to let this veteran faction intervene and develop the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce together. The reason Listen had signed this exchange oath was that this exchange oath would only be beneficial to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce under the circumstances at that time. However, after the Pinnacle Class 3 Creation Master that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had nurtured became a Class 4 Creation Master, he had left the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce with the other 3 Creation Masters. This had completely changed the situation. Today's first update, end of this chapter. Chapter 337. Listen also understood that he had been schemed against by this veteran faction. The Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's Creation Master had left. Although this veteran faction did not directly appear, there was a faint shadow of this veteran faction. In the current situation, if Listen let this veteran faction intervene in the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's development, After this veteran faction entered the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, Listen would not have the strength to resist at all. Perhaps in less than a month, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce would be equivalent to completely changing hands with this veteran faction. Therefore, at this critical moment, Listen used all the connections he had maintained over the years. But in the end, Listen found that his connections were not qualified to touch the category of a Class 4 creation master. Even if he raised the market price and took out more source-type items, he still did not have this qualification. This made Listen, who already knew how precious a Class 4 creation master's resources were, understand even more how powerful and terrifying they were. At the last moment, Listen suddenly thought of Lin Yuan, who had only traded once before. Lin Yuan had become Listen's last life-saving straw. Listen did not have much hope and just wanted to try his best. However, he did not expect that this life-saving straw that Lin Yuan had wanted to grab would become a driftwood that could save him. Deep gratitude emerged in Listen's originally exhausted expression. Suddenly Listen's heart sank. Before Lin Yuan replied to the message, he solemnly typed a message. "Listen, I wonder if the expert is interested in the Chamber of Commerce." After sending this message, Listen seemed to have lost all his strength. He had used all his abilities and means to protect the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in the past 3 years. Listen had always had a clear understanding of himself. He knew that his extremely high emotional intelligence and ability to win people's hearts were not worth mentioning in the face of a veteran faction. There was a limit to one's strength. Listen had always positioned his talent in development and not in production resources. However, the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had always given him a mess. There were simply no resources and time for Listen to use them to develop the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. However, Listen's heart was already relaxed at this moment. This was already the last effort that Listen could do for the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yuan was about to reply to Listen's message, but he did not expect that before he could reply, Listen had already sent another message. Upon seeing Listen's message, Lin Yuan could not help but smirk and sigh in his heart. It seemed that he had guessed correctly. Lin Yuan had not intended to respond to Listen. He only wanted to complete the transaction and obtain the 6 source-type items to accumulate resources. However, when Lin Yuan saw the words Chamber of Commerce, he was rather moved. Most of the stores that sold spiritual ingredients and phase on the star web came from large and small chambers of commerce. For example, the energy ores, butterfly shell flowers, and spirit siphon goldfish that he had purchased from Star Web's Zhou Jiasun store were actually supplied by these chambers of commerce. Some precious phase and spiritual materials usually had to be purchased or auctioned in the Rare Life Form Pavilion on the Star Web. However, the Radiance Federation's merchant associations occupied half of the daily consumption of ordinary spiritual ingredients and ordinary phase that had a high circulation rate. Lin Yuan needed to consume a lot of low-grade resources daily, and the consumption of energy ores was increasing. If he could control a chamber of commerce, it would be much more convenient for him to do anything in the future. In the future, he would no longer have to go through so much trouble to purchase low-grade spiritual ingredients and energy ores on the Star Web. The price of obtaining resources directly from the Chamber of Commerce was different on the Star Web. Even if Lin Yuan bought resources from Zhou Jiasun's store, he would still be earning a portion of his own money, which was already much more favorable. However, the price was also very different from obtaining resources directly from the Chamber of Commerce. It was already extremely difficult to apply for a Chamber of Commerce's qualification in the Radiance Federation. Moreover, the most valuable thing about a Chamber of Commerce was not just the qualification but those small, meticulous channels. Every time a Chamber of Commerce established a relationship with a Star Web store, it was equivalent to having a stable income. Therefore, in the eyes of a faction, even a small Chamber of Commerce was considered a high-quality resource. This was also why veteran factions had their eyes on the listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, which had been in decline at that time. Lin Yuan felt that he should meet Listen on the Star Web. He sent a message. Deep Mountain Elder Lin, bring your 11 source-type items to the Star Web Guest Center. After saying that, Lin Yuan set off first. When Listen saw Lin Yuan's message, he, who had just put down his worries and relaxed, suddenly felt his blood rush to his brain. He felt nervous and perturbed. This was because Listen did not see Lin Yuan's true thoughts from his message. It was reasonable to say that Lin Yuan asking him to meet on Star Web was equivalent to giving him a chance to talk face-to-face. However, Lin Yuan had asked him to bring 11 source-type items and seemed to just want to choose the source-type items to complete the previous transaction. Listen was originally disheartened, but now, he seemed to see a faint ray of hope amidst this perturbed Listen was not afraid that hope was rare, but he was afraid that he would not even have the chance to grasp it. At that moment, Listen's heart became abnormally firm. How could a person who could be drowned by the fierce waves at any time not seize this rare opportunity? However, this hope of holding on to his courage was given to him by Deep Mountain Elder Lin, whom he had only made a transaction with once before. This feeling of there is no way out after the mountains and rivers are heavy, and there is a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. It made Listen, who was used to relying on himself and had no one to rely on, feel extremely cherished. However, Listen still needed to fight for this path with all his might. This was because he knew that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce that he owned was not worth mentioning in front of a faction that could casually take out Bronze/Epic Phase. Listen set off with a firm and perturbed mood and headed to the Star Web Guest Center that Lin Yuan had agreed on. When he arrived at the appointed room in the Star Web Guest Center, Listen saw a sunny youth with a natural aura sitting there quietly waiting for him. A hint of shock flashed in Listen's eyes. He had heard that the purchase with No Loss Star Web Store's owner was a young man. Many people even compared the purchase with No Loss Store's owner with the young hero, Black. However, Listen had never really believed these words. He really could not imagine that this faction, which clearly had a pinnacle Class 4 creation master and could easily take out Bronze/Epic Phase, was owned by a young man. Second update, end of this chapter. Chapter 338. Lin Yuan saw Listen in a daze and smiled brightly. Sit down and talk. Listen did not expect Lin Yuan to be so young. In fact, Lin Yuan did not expect Listen to be so young. He looked like he was only about 20 years old. Lin Yuan would not look down on Listen because of his young age. On the contrary, Lin Yuan thought highly of Listen because of his age. A high EQ and the ability to win people's hearts might be excellent in an older person, but it was not considered valuable. Under the tempering of time, adults who had experienced the ways of the world were always more tactful. However, Listen had such a high EQ and the ability to win people's hearts at such a young age. Lin Yuan could not help but sigh. Although Listen was shocked, he was grateful to Lin Yuan from the bottom of his heart. The young man in front of him, who had helped him in a desperate situation, might have just done a trivial thing to him. But to Listen, it was the most precious salvation. Since Listen had been firm about his plan. At that moment, Listen did not sit face to face with Lin Yuan. Instead, he knelt on one knee devoutly, put the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's remaining 11 source-type items on a tray, and raised it in front of the young man. Expert, I want to offer the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce to get your protection. I only hope that you can protect the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and let me develop it. In the future, the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and everything I have will be yours. Lin Yuan did not expect Listen to do this after entering the door and seeing him. Lin Yuan fell into deep thought. Since Listen said he wanted him to protect the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, Lin Yuan had to weigh the pros and cons. Should he protect the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in trouble? Was the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce's value worth protecting? While thinking, Lin Yuan could clearly feel Listen's hand, which was holding the tray containing the 11 source-type items, trembling slightly. It showed Listen's apprehension at that moment. However, the more silent Lin Yuan was, the tighter Listen's heart was, and the farther the hope in his heart was from him. At that moment, Listen's mind suddenly became very chaotic. For some reason he thought of two kinds of food. One was pickled fish with pickled vegetables, and the other was braised chicken. Listen felt that he was a pickled fish with pickled vegetables, sour, vegetable, and extra. He still felt that he was a braised chicken, flustered, stuffy, and trash. And at that moment, Listen suddenly felt the 11 source-type items on the tray move. Listen knew that Lin Yuan had started to observe the source-type item in the tray. This made Listen's heart tighten, and the corners of his eyes turned a little red. However, the corners of Listen's mouth curled up. I only hope that you can protect the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and let it continue to develop. In the future, everything that belongs to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and me will be yours. Listen had already let go of his insistence. It didn't matter if he wasn't around to develop the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. It would be fine as long as the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce that his father's generation had painstakingly supported could continue to exist. Lin Yuan was playing with the source-type item in the tray and pondering. Lin Yuan threw the source-type items in his hand onto the tray, making a crisp sound. Listen's hand that was holding the tray trembled. At that moment, Listen heard the youth's calm voice. If you pledge allegiance to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce, then you will naturally manage it. It seems that there are some things that can't be said on Star Web today. Upon hearing the youth's words, Listen was wrapped in ecstasy and froze on the spot. At that moment, he heard the youth's calm voice again. Come to the royal capital. Let's meet and talk in reality. Listen only felt that the holy sound that dispelled the haze pierced his ears and brushed away the tiredness and uneasiness of more than a month. At the same time, Listen's eyes flashed with a dazzling light of hope. Listen knew that since a bigwig like the youth in front of him said that he wanted to meet and talk with him in reality, it meant that there was a great chance of this matter being half done. Listen raised his head and said with a carefree smile that had been suppressed by the haze for a long time, I'm in Indigo Azure City. I'll go to the royal capital now. Lin Yuan and Listen made a verbal agreement on Star Web and left Star Web. Lin Yuan felt that Listen's sudden and decisive decision was a little sudden. However, he was more impressed by Listen's amazing courage in addition to his high EQ and his ability to maintain interpersonal relationships. Lin Yuan did not directly agree to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce and Listen's allegiance. Instead, he asked Listen to come to his mansion in the royal capital to talk in detail. This was because Lin Yuan was still unaware of the problems that the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce had encountered. Whether Lin Yuan wanted to control the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce through Listen, he still needed to fully understand the situation before making a decision. However, Lin Yuan had previously agreed with Listen that Lin Yuan would quickly complete the transaction of Listen using 6 source-type items in exchange for 2 bronze/flawless phase to upgrade to epic. It was also considered helping Listen get through the current difficulties. Lin Yuan had a good impression of Listen, so when Listen encountered difficulties, Lin Yuan agreed to the transaction and helped him. However, Lin Yuan wanted to build his own faction and do things that were beneficial to his faction. He would not do useless work because of his benevolent heart and let his faction bring a burden. Lin Yuan wanted to build a sky city on the floating island Whale's Back and let it be a cloud hanging in the sky above the 9 heavens. If he could control a power like the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce in the dark, for Lin Yuan, there would only be benefits and no disadvantages. This was because every power that Lin Yuan could control and hide in the dark could be considered a foundation in Lin Yuan's hands. Such a foundation was far more reliable than the power in the network that Lin Yuan had spread out. This was because white clouds could last for thousands of years, and white clouds could remain unchanged for thousands of years. This was because although the white clouds were floating, they had the world's water as their foundation. As soon as Lin Yuan left the room, he saw Wenyu standing at his door with a few pieces of paper. From time to time he would use a pen to make changes on these papers. His expression was extremely serious. Upon seeing Lin Yuan come out of the room, Wenyu hurriedly said, Young master, I was just about to knock on your door to look for you. What do you think of the proposal I wrote for the planning of a private force? As she said that, she handed the 5 or 6 pieces of paper in her hand to Lin Yuan. His eyes were filled with anticipation. He took the pieces of paper that Wenyu handed over, which clearly stated some of her views on the development of the faction. However, the more he looked, the more he felt that something was wrong. Third update, end of chapter. Chapter 339. Lin Yuan had already established the faction's development route in his previous conversation with Wenyu. Lin Yuan already had a plan in his heart. However, Wenyu had submitted this private faction's construction and views. Lin Yuan still read it very seriously. Through what was written on the paper, Lin Yuan could more intuitively see Wenyu's views and direction on building a faction. At first, Lin Yuan could not help but secretly nod when he read it. Many of Wenyu's ideas really coincided with his own. However, when he continued to read and saw Wenyu's views on other factions, Lin Yuan felt that something was wrong. It was not that Wenyu and Lin Yuan's ideas were different or that Wenyu's views were wrong. It was just that when Wenyu mentioned other factions, her words revealed a feeling. If Lin Yuan had to describe this feeling, it could only be described as a sense of superiority. Lin Yuan felt this sense of superiority in Wenyu's words and quickly understood. As the Radiant Moon Palace's spirit attendant, Wenyu's starting point was not what ordinary people could compare to. Therefore, Wenyu's vision had always been at the level of the Leaning Moon Mountain and the Radiant Moon Palace. Wenyu essentially did not care much about the Radiance Federation's other factions. If Wenyu used this sense of superiority in other aspects, Lin Yuan might have to give her a few words of advice. However, if Lin Yuan started to develop his faction according to his previous strategy of accumulating resources, Lin Yuan felt that there was nothing wrong with Wenyu's sense of superiority. On the contrary, this sense of superiority was a little insufficient. A bronze/epic Fey was equivalent to a luxury item for spirit chi professionals. As long as Lin Yuan wanted, he could have a large number of bronze/epic fays. This meant that Lin Yuan could completely establish a luxury dynasty that mainly customized bronze/epic fays. Every bronze/epic fay could represent Lin Yuan's private faction's sense of superiority. At the same time, some large veteran factions might also be able to produce the sense of superiority derived from bronze/epic fays. Although they might not necessarily be as many as Lin Yuan, it could not be said that they did not have the power to contend. However, compared to these large veteran factions, Lin Yuan could casually take out bronze/epic fays to trade. It could be said that customizing bronze/epic fays according to the willpower rune was a way for Lin Yuan's private faction to develop and absorb resources. Therefore, Lin Yuan's private faction's sense of superiority was always showing off to his actual faction. Those large veteran factions might have bronze/epic fays, but they didn't have enough. However, these large veteran factions had always been in high demand for bronze/epic fays. As long as these large veteran forces did not collectively go crazy, they would definitely not let their bronze/epic undead go out. Therefore, Lin Yuan's faction had actually been at the pinnacle of superiority from the beginning. As long as he was willing, he could even take out bronze/legend fays. Therefore, he could stand at the top of his sense of superiority and look down on the entire chain of contempt of his sense of superiority and look down on the other factions. All of these bronze/epic fays were sought after by king-class experts in the market. Even if a large-scale veteran faction had a pinnacle class 4 creation master who was lucky enough to nurture a bronze/legend fay, it would be impossible to do so. However, would a veteran faction that could produce a bronze/legend fay be willing to put it on the market? Lin Yuan would not easily let a bronze/legend fay flow into the market. However, this bronze/legend fay was the strongest trump card for Lin Yuan's private faction to suppress other factions in terms of superiority. He did not even need anything else. He only needed a bronze/legend oath lily of the valley. It would be able to clearly indicate to all other factions that Lin Yuan's private faction was not to be trifled with. In fact, compared to a class 5 creation master, in terms of increasing a phase grade and healing a phase damaged roots, it was simply incomparable. In fact, Lin Yuan could not even compare to a class 3 creation master in terms of increasing a phase grade and healing its damaged roots. He was only at the level of a class 2 creation master. However, if it was to nurture a bronze/legend fay, Lin Yuan did not think he would lose to a class 5 creation master. In fact, Lin Yuan felt that a class 5 creation master's ability to nurture bronze/legend fays was not comparable to his at all. As long as Lin Yuan was willing to take out a spirit chi crystal condensed by Morbius spirit chi condensation, he would be able to inject it into these bronze/epic fays. If he injected the spirit chi crystals into these bronze/epic fays, Lin Yuan would be able to harvest at least 5 or even 6 legend fays. According to this calculation, if Lin Yuan did not use the spirit chi crystals to increase the strength of his fays, in that case he would be able to have a bronze/legend fay every day on average. This was why Lin Yuan's private faction could be mysterious. It could be noble. It could be superior to other factions in terms of resources. If fays were compared to a luxury goods chain of contempt, then Lin Yuan was now standing at the top of the luxury goods chain of contempt. After reading Wen Yu's views on the private faction's development, Lin Yuan looked up and saw her expectant expression. Lin Yuan nodded firmly and said, "Wen Yu, your thoughts and plans are very good. Wen Yu, your ideas and plans are very good. Many of your views are the same as mine." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Wen Yu's face immediately revealed a joyful expression. Wen Yu was only a young girl who was less than 20 years old, but she was still a young girl. She would be happy and smile when being praised by the person she wanted the most. However, after Lin Yuan affirmed Wen Yu's plan, she heard him say solemnly, "Wen Yu, the superiority in this plan in terms of resources is not enough. Wen Yu, the sense of superiority in this plan is not enough. We have the advantage, so we have the right to be arrogant. The more arrogant we are, the more the other factions will value us, fear us, and be unable to see through us. However, this is only in terms of resources, not in terms of martial power. We're building our own private faction, not the Leaning Moon Mountain or the Radiant Moon Palace. Thus, to the other factions we're just a newly established faction. We still need time to fully develop our wings." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Wen Yu immediately understood what he meant and could not help but feel a little ashamed. Wen Yu also realized her own problem. While she was thinking about things, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. When she was thinking about things, she would always imperceptibly put the thinking that she had developed in the Leaning Moon Mountain's Radiant Moon Palace into her current thinking. Wen Yu also understood Lin Yuan's determination to build a private faction. A smart person like Wen Yu would not make the same mistake after knowing her problem. Young master, I know where the problem is. I'll go write another one and show it to you. Chapter 4, end of this chapter. Chapter 340. Wen Yu returned to her room and began to write down the development and planning of her new private force. At this time Hu Quan, the true liver emperor, couldn't bear it anymore and returned to his room to catch up on his sleep. The mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer ate the 2 big pots of honey pancakes in the morning. Once again they teamed up and strolled around the streets with a clear goal in mind. However, the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer had different goals. The mother of Bloodbath went out to eat all the delicacies it was interested in. On the other hand, Endless Summer's goal was to go to an accessory store to buy spirit accessories that she liked. Yesterday, Endless Summer had gone out to shop with the mother of Bloodbath for half a day. When she returned, she had bought nearly 100 necklaces, rings, bracelets and brooches of all kinds. In short, the 2 suzerain/myth breed Fays, the mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer, had now fallen to the extent that they only knew how to buy things on the streets. It perfectly embodied the importance of eating and loving beauty for women. Wuxia went straight to the Radiance Sacred Hall when he started cooking dinner this morning. 2 days later, Wuxia would use the internal channels to conduct the Radiance 100 sequence ranking. However, Wuxia had to do some other tests in the Radiance Sacred Hall over the next 2 days. Therefore, Wuxia could not cook in the manor for the next few days. The mother of Bloodbath had taken over the cooking job in the past few days when Wuxia was not around. The mother of Bloodbath didn't really want to cook in the manor. Instead, it planned to go out for a stroll on the streets for the next 2 days. He brought back the delicacies that he liked and shared them with the people in the manor. Thus, Lin Yuan was the only one left in the hall. Looking at this huge fish tank made of completely jade-textured red sandalwood, Lin Yuan could not help but feel a headache. He really did not know how he was going to fish them out of the red sandalwood longevity fish tank. However, at this moment, the bronze eye/flawless spirit-containing hibiscus at the top of the fish tank was growing more and more prosperous. Many of the bronze eye/flawless spirit-containing hibiscuses had been weakened by the massive spirit chi released by the 5 fortune ranches. It had advanced to bronze rank 2 or even 3. Although the spirit-containing hibiscuses bloomed in the morning and withered in the evening, it was currently noon. The flower bud of the spirit-containing hibiscus had just opened for a while. The flower was huge and beautiful. It had the artistic conception of the lush green is quiet and tranquil, and the red dress is shallow and deep. During the day, there were large hibiscus flowers dancing with lustrous wings on the red sandalwood fish tank. At night, lustrous winged butterflies flapped their wings and played among the green leaves of the spirit-containing hibiscus. However, he suddenly realized that one of the lustrous winged butterflies was different from the others. The lustrous winged butterfly was a fay that flew in pairs. Those 98 lustrous winged butterflies were flying in a group, but only this lustrous winged butterfly was like a lonely patient. Usually, he would stay far away from the 98 flying lustrous winged butterflies. Moreover, those 98 lustrous winged butterflies seemed to be afraid of this lustrous winged butterfly. However, Lin Yuan did not care too much. He spent a lot of effort to open the mechanism Hu Quan had set on the red sandalwood longevity fish tank. The 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps had been personally nurtured by Lin Yuan. After seeing Lin Yuan, the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps were very friendly. The 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps were preparing to use their tails to greet Lin Yuan like in the spirit pool. However, since they were already in the red sandalwood longevity fish tank and not in the spirit pool, the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps were about to use their tails to greet Lin Yuan. The huge fish tails of the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps, which were almost as long as their bodies, brought about a splash that drenched Lin Yuan's entire body. If Lin Yuan had not stood firmly on the ladder, he would have been slapped to the ground by these 3 sudden splashes of water. Lin Yuan used his hand to wipe the splashes on his face and wet hair and could not help but feel very helpless. He looked at the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps angrily. He wanted to upgrade the 3 little fellas from Bronze X/Epic to Bronze X/Legend, but the 3 little fellas actually sent him to change his clothes with 3 splashes. Lin Yuan stored the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps in the diamond face storage box. He went down the ladder and shook his wrist. The amber button-shaped source-type source sand on his wrist turned into a few strands of yellow sand. These strands of yellow sand sucked up the large water stains on the ground. Then, the source sand turned into the shape of an amber button and stuck to Lin Yuan's diamond face storage box, which was also in the shape of an amber button. Not long after Lin Yuan fished up the 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps, Ostrich Logistics delivered the wood-weaving house centipede and oath lily of the valley that Lin Yuan had purchased to Lin Yuan's mansion. Whether it was the wood-weaving house centipede or the oath lily of the valley, Lin Yuan had picked the best growth among the same grade and quality. In particular, this wood-weaving house centipede was very lively. Lin Yuan brought the bronze face storage box containing the wood-weaving house centipede and oath lily of the valley back to his room. Then he entered the Spirit Lock spatial zone. The Spirit Lock spatial zone was still the same. It was just that the 2 completely jade-textured crimson parasol wood shelves full of phoenix feathers and phoenix patterns. The surface of the 5 types of rare wood, which had been placed for nearly 10 days, had a certain degree of jade texturing. Under the extremely high spirit chi concentration in the Spirit Lock spatial zone, they were already faintly emitting a jade-textured luster. However, these rare wood that had already become jade-textured would need to be 5 times heavier to completely become jade-textured. Therefore, it would take at least another 20 days. When the gray crane species Fei saw that Lin Yuan had returned to the Spirit Lock spatial zone, it immediately stuck to him. It flapped its wings and used its small head to rub against Lin Yuan's hand that was hanging by the side of his leg. It was obvious that this little fellow was already used to staying in the Spirit Lock spatial zone for a night. Furthermore, this little fellow was playing very well with the wind speed rapid antelope in the Spirit Lock spatial zone and had obviously become good friends. Lin Yuan rubbed this little fellow's small head and sensed the state of its genetic model. Lin Yuan sighed. At this speed, this little fellow wanted to fully display its genetic model. He would probably have to wait until he finished participating in the Radiance 100 sequence test before it could more or less recover. The aquamarine elemental shellfish, celestine elemental shellfish, and scorching elemental shellfish were all absorbing the massive and pure spiritual power in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. They were dutifully spitting out the elemental pearls. The floating island whale was also constantly absorbing the massive and pure water and chi elements produced from the elemental pearls. In addition, the massive and pure spiritual power was slowly developing. At that moment, Lin Yuan cut his palm again and used his blood to deepen the bond with the floating island whale. At the same time, he sensed the floating island whale's condition in the crystal eggshell. After carefully sensing the floating island whale's condition, Lin Yuan had a rough idea in his heart. Chapter 5, End of this chapter. Chapter 341. Even if Morbius grade did not increase, the floating island whale would probably be able to hatch from the crystal eggshell in June next year. Although the Twin Red Pagoda's main flower had only nurtured the life-form sacrificial fire for over 10 days, Lin Yuan could clearly feel that the life-form sacrificial fire was constantly growing stronger. It seemed that the burning elemental shellfish's main flower's life-form sacrificial fire was still very powerful for the Twin Red Pagoda's main flower. It seemed that the scorching elemental shellfish's life-form sacrificial fire, which contained a huge amount of fire elements, was still very powerful for the Twin Red Pagoda's main flower. Lin Yuan had already given the matured life-form sacrificial fire to Endless Summer, so he hoped that this life-form sacrificial fire could mature quickly. Then Lin Yuan began his goal of enhancing the phase this time. He first placed the 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps in a huge water tank in the Spirit Lock spatial zone. Then he placed the huge water tank with the 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps on his breeding table. The 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps were now in excellent condition. They were much better than when Lin Yuan had just promoted them to bronze/epic, be it in terms of physical appearance or spirit. Moreover, their tail fins and wing fins were a bit longer than before. The wider tail fins and wing fins made the Dragon Phoenix landscape carps more ornamental. However, Lin Yuan also discovered something even more strange about these 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps. Although these 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps looked no different from before, Lin Yuan carefully sensed them now. But now that he sensed it carefully, he realized that while the dragon bloodline and phoenix bloodline were constantly rising, they were also assimilating with each other. This assimilation did not refer to devouring each other, but to accepting each other and slowly fusing into a whole. Lin Yuan had decided that after enhancing these 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps to legend, they would no longer be stuck at bronze and would start to evolve freely. After these 3 bronze/epic Dragon Phoenix landscape carps reached bronze X/legend, it should not take long for them to reach silver I/legend. It shouldn't take long for it to advance from bronze X/legend to silver I/legend. The Dragon Phoenix landscape carps had evolved from the myriad form carp. The myriad form carp's characteristic was that each time it advanced in grade, it would evolve to a certain extent. Therefore, when the Dragon Phoenix landscape carps evolved to the silver grade, there would definitely be a certain change. After evolving from the manifestation carp to the Dragon Phoenix landscape carp, its foundation had already been decided. However, he was still very much looking forward to the changes that might occur after the evolution of these three Dragon Phoenix landscape carps. Then he took the bronze/epic dragon's mouth orchid. At that moment, this bronze/epic dragon's mouth orchid still looked no different from weeds because it had been plucked off by Lin Yuan previously. The flower bud on the agave orchid had also withered. However, when the dragon's mouth orchid reached the legendary grade, it would naturally grow another stem. There will be another dragon's mouth orchid on the stem. The normal eye/normal wood weaving house centipede had also been enhanced to bronze X/epic. The wood weaving house centipede was about 20 centimeters long, and its dark green body had 100 legs. It was a multi-legged insect. It had to be said that this wood weaving house centipede was somewhat similar to the source-type spine goo that Cheng Rui had contracted. However, the wood weaving house centipede was a very docile insect species Fei. It only ate wood and did not have any aggressiveness. Even if you forced it into a corner, it was rare to hear that the wood weaving house centipede would attack spirit chi professionals when it was in self-defense. It could be considered the representative of "I'm ugly but very gentle" among insect species Feis. At that time, Lin Yuan had chosen to buy the bronze/flawless oath lily of the valley. It was not that there were no bronze/normal oath lilies of the valley for sale in the market at that time. It was because this bronze/flawless oath lily of the valley's flower branch looked very layered, and the layers were like the shape of a pagoda. It was also full of pure white bell-shaped oath lily of the valley. This pot was considered the most luxuriant and well-trimmed among the pots of oath lilies of the valley that Lin Yuan had seen. Therefore Lin Yuan had bought this bronze/flawless oath lily of the valley. Since the oath lily of the valley was going to evolve into a legend Fei, it was necessary to choose a good base. Lin Yuan upgraded this bronze/flawless oath lily of the valley to bronze/epic. He looked at the 6 bronze/epic Feis in front of him and took a spirit chi crystal. Then he used force to crush the spirit chi crystal. Morbius, which was on Lin Yuan's wrist, controlled the spirit chi crystal and divided it into 5 portions. It poured into the dragon's mouth orchid, the wood weaving house centipede, and the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps. After the wood weaving house centipede, the dragon's mouth orchid, and the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps absorbed the huge amount of pure spirit chi released after the spirit chi crystal was shattered. Their quality quickly improved. Finally, after the wood weaving house centipede, the dragon's mouth orchid, and the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps were upgraded to bronze/legend. Only then did Morbius inject the remaining spiritual power in the spirit chi crystal into the bronze/epic oath lily of the valley. As a result, this bronze/epic oath lily of the valley really lived up to expectations and evolved into a bronze/legend oath lily of the valley. Lin Yuan looked at the 6 bronze/legend Feis in front of him and revealed a sunny smile. It was not that Lin Yuan was happy because of the preciousness of these 6 bronze/legend Feis. It was because when these 6 bronze/epic Feis evolved to legend, they actually gave Lin Yuan 2 surprises. The first surprise naturally came from the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps. Previously, in order to let the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps reach legend before letting them increase their grade, the dragon phoenix landscape carps had already reached legend. Therefore, Lin Yuan had been suppressing the evolution of the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps. Therefore, the dragon phoenix landscape carps had already accumulated a lot of spiritual power in their bodies. Now that the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps reached bronze X/legend, they actually evolved at the same time. The 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps evolving from bronze X to silver at the same time could only be considered a small surprise. But immediately after, the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps gave Lin Yuan an even bigger surprise. Because of Morbius true data, after the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps evolved to silver, their names had changed. These 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps should no longer be called dragon phoenix landscape carps. 6th update, seeking recommendation votes, monthly votes. Life's Passerby's 3rd update is done. Thank you for your support, Big Boss. End of this chapter. Chapter 342. At that moment, the 3 bronze X/legend dragon phoenix landscape carps were emitting a dazzling brilliance. Although this dazzling brilliance was only black and white, it was ink-like. However, the stone, grass, flower, and tree in the ink-like brilliance formed a house, a pavilion, a platform, and a pavilion. As for the house, the pavilion, the platform, and the pavilion, they formed a city. The city, the mountains, and the rivers formed a house, a pavilion, a platform, and a pavilion. The myriad of cities, mountains, and rivers formed a constantly changing ink-like world. Just as the rivers and mountains were dyed in ink, the ink-like world rose to the apex. The three Bronze X/Legend Dragon Phoenix landscape carps, which were evolving toward silver, emitted a dazzling brilliance that formed an ink world. It changed in an instant. The originally black and white world seemed to be injected with 8 kinds of bright and beautiful colors. These 8 kinds of bright and beautiful colors seemed to cater to the most pure colors in nature. Every color seemed to be able to reach the origin of all things. Yellow, red, blue, green, purple, orange, and black. The 8 colors of the universe were immeasurable, and the 8 colors of the formless gave birth to longevity. The 8 colors were immediately bright and beautiful, and the myriad world seemed to have evolved tens of thousands of years of vitality in an instant. Although Lin Yuan could only see the rivers and mountains flowing under the 8 colors, he still couldn't see the Dragon Phoenix landscape carps evolving. However, when Lin Yuan saw the Dragon Phoenix landscape carps evolved name, a different kind of shock arose in his heart. With the dragon and phoenix bloodlines, solidify the eternal life of mountains and rivers. The Dragon Phoenix landscape carps had already changed their name to Mountain River Eternal Life Carps. After a long time, the Bronze X/Legend Dragon Phoenix landscape carps finally completed their evolution to Silver I/Legend Mountain River Eternal Life Carps. At that moment, the halo of the 8 bright and beautiful rivers and mountains had completely dissipated. Lin Yuan finally saw what the Silver I/Legend Mountain River Eternal Life Carps looked like. The Mountain River Eternal Life Carps were actually not much different from the previous Dragon Phoenix landscape carps. However, the Mountain River Eternal Life Carps and the Dragon Phoenix landscape carps gave Lin Yuan a completely different feeling. If the Dragon Phoenix landscape carps gave Lin Yuan the feeling that they were praising the beauty of mountains and rivers, in that case, the Mountain River Eternal Life Carp gave him the feeling that it was guarding the splendid land's fortune. Lin Yuan took a closer look at the Mountain River Eternal Life Carp, which had 8 bright colors instead of the ink color, and his pupils constricted. The Mountain River Eternal Life Carp's myriad miles of rivers and mountains painting had become even more complicated. As the saying goes, the 4 directions welcome the 8 colors, and the 8 colors give birth to 6 blessings. Aside from the fact that the myriad phenomena on the Mountain and River Eternal Life Carp's back were moving faster, there were also many more fortune and longevity runes. The happy bat longevity mark appeared on the fish's forehead, signifying a flood of good fortune. The fish's eyes gave birth to the longevity mark, implying that it was bright and clear. The fins had the pine deer longevity pattern, implying that the pine deer and deer lived together in spring. The belly of the fish was marked with a golden pomegranate, which meant that the pomegranate would blossom into 100 seeds. The fish scales bore the mark of an orchid, implying longevity of an orchid. Jiang Wu's longevity mark was carved on the fish's tail, implying boundless longevity. The everlasting rivers and mountains rune fell on the back of the fish, revealing its stature. Lin Yuan carefully distinguished and found that there were a total of 6 types of fortune and longevity words, which just happened to imply good fortune. The 6 types of fortune and longevity runes on the Mountain River Eternal Life Carp's back and the 8 colors of mountains and rivers flowed like a kind of immeasurable blessing. Yan Shanhe's lifespan, immeasurable blessings. The Mountain River Eternal Life Carp might seem abnormally crowded in this narrow water tank. One simply couldn't see the Mountain River Eternal Life Carp's excellent posture. However, even in this narrow water tank, just the ripples created by the Mountain River Eternal Life Carp's swaying tail and fin contrasted with the magnificent colors on its body, as though it could bloom thousands of fragrant flowers. Just one flower would make one reminisce for a long time. Lin Yuan looked at the 3 Mountain River Eternal Life Carps and thought to himself, if the previous 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps could be considered superior auspicious signs, then these 3 Mountain River Eternal Life Carps could be considered supreme-grade auspicious signs at the very least. It could even be said that they had already surpassed the auspicious signs category. Lin Yuan couldn't bear to see these 3 Mountain River Eternal Life Carps squeezed in this water tank, so he simply stored them in the diamond face storage box. When it was time to go out, he would put them back into the red sandalwood longevity fish tank made of completely jade-textured red sandalwood. This time he had enhanced these 6 phases from Bronze/Epic to Bronze/Legend and brought a total of 2 surprises to Lin Yuan. However, compared to the 3 Dragon Phoenix landscape carps' evolution from Bronze to Silver to Mountain River Eternal Life Carps, the remaining small surprise seemed insignificant. However, this small surprise would probably make Hu Quan so happy that he wouldn't sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. As a tool, Hu Quan's happiness wouldn't diminish even if he worked for another 10 hours every day to celebrate for a year. As a tool, Hu Quan's happiness wouldn't diminish even if he worked for another 10 hours every day to celebrate for a year. This was because the wood-weaving house centipede that Hu Quan had given to him had mutated when it had been enhanced to Bronze X/Legend. Of course, this mutation couldn't be called evolution. This mutation referred to the wood-weaving house centipede's wood-weaving silk sac at its tail splitting into 2. The wood-weaving house centipede's silk sac splitting was similar to Lin Yuan's succulent jasmine lily's colony growth. The colony growth mutation caused the jasmine lily to change from a single flower head to a multiple flower head. Although the total healing energy in the jasmine lily's body did not change, it could transform single-target healing into group healing. It could also automatically switch between single-target healing and group healing according to Lin Yuan's will. The wood-weaving house centipede's silk sac splitting was the same. The wood-weaving house centipede could eat wood and turn it into a liquid state in its body. Finally, the silk sac at the wood-weaving house centipede's tail would eject tough threads made of wood. This was because the wood-weaving house centipede's speed of decomposing wood did not change. Therefore, even if the wood-weaving house centipede's silk sac split into 2, the total amount of wood threads that could be ejected would still remain the same. However, the wood-weaving house centipede's silk sac splitting into 2 was not as simple as saving time and efficiency for a spirit craftsman. The double threads ejected from the 2 silk sacs could allow a spirit craftsman to use double the number of threads to create. Not only could it save more effort for the spirit craftsman, but it could also increase the possibility of products made from wood. This could be used for a full month. Moreover, as long as the wood-weaving house centipede's grade was high enough, the efficiency of decomposing wood would be faster. In fact, to a certain extent, the wood-weaving house centipede's silk sac splitting mutation could indeed allow a spirit craftsman's ability to produce wood to achieve double the effect. Hu Quan, who was already a top-notch tool, had become even more valiant. As long as Hu Quan fused the Bronze X/Legend wood-weaving house centipede with the willpower rune and the fantasy breed jade saber mantis from before, he would have 2 fantasy breed phase. This way, Hu Quan would have 2 fantasy breed phase, and his spirit craftsman standard had long reached the standard of a Class 5 spirit craftsman. As long as he went to the Spirit Craftsman Association for certification, Hu Quan would be a true Class 5 spirit craftsman. The Mountain and River Eternal Life Carp wrote several times and finally chose this. I hope everyone likes it. Asking for tickets today's first time is even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 343. As for the Bronze/Epic Oath Lily of the Valley, its appearance did not change much after evolving to Bronze/Legend. However, the pagoda-shaped Oath Lily of the Valley's pure white bell-shaped flowers bloomed. The moment it was promoted to Legend, a layer of lustrous white flowing light appeared. It was as if every single pure white bell-shaped flower had lit up in an instant. Coupled with the pagoda-shaped plant's shape, it looked like a tree of bell-shaped nephrite. It gave off a feeling of riches and honor. The flowing light in the pure white bell-shaped flower was the reason why the Oath Lily of the Valley could carry oaths. Or it could be said that the rippling light was actually a kind of curse in essence. The Legend Oath Lily of the Valley's flower was a container to store oaths and also a curse to seal the willpower rune of the betrayer. Lin Yuan did not pay much attention to this Bronze/Legend Oath Lily of the Valley and kept it in the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box. This Bronze/Legend Oath Lily of the Valley was not something Lin Yuan used often, so there was no need to put it in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone. The resources in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone were already tight, and putting it in the Spirit Lock Spatial Zone would undoubtedly take up space. He just had to buy an area on StarWeb to build his faction. He could place this Bronze/Legend Oath Lily of the Valley in his faction's room. There was only one Bronze/Epic Fae left that Lin Yuan had yet to check. The last Fae, which was the Dragon's Mouth Orchid that had been promoted from Bronze/Epic to Legend, had truly broadened Lin Yuan's horizons. Lin Yuan did not know what changes would occur when the Dragon's Mouth Orchid evolved from Epic to Legend. For example, when the Dragon's Mouth Orchid bloomed, the Dragon's Mouth Orchid would be light blue when it was at the perfect rank, but when it reached the Epic rank, it would be dark blue. However, Lin Yuan did not expect the Dragon's Mouth Orchid to actually turn completely black when it reached Legend. A huge black Dragon's Mouth Orchid flower was much bigger than Lin Yuan's palm. The dark blue Dragon's Mouth Orchid flower's stamen had a layer of shiny scale-like wood structure. Now this black bronze/legend dragon's mouth orchid flower stamen looked like bright diamonds. This was a sign of wood crystallization. As early as when the dragon's mouth orchid had been promoted to legend, Lin Yuan had smelled its scent. However, the smell emitted by the legendary dragon god orchid was already somewhat fragrant and stinky. The smell was so fragrant that it smelled bad, and there was a taste that was as stimulating as liquor. This smell was the unique smell of dragon species phase. Lin Yuan finally broke off the huge black legend dragon's mouth orchid from the dragon's mouth orchid stem. It had to be said that this ink-black legendary quality agave orchid was quite sturdy. Previously, using a spirit chi crystal to enhance these 6 bronze/epic phase to legend was just a small matter. Now he had to truly enhance his own fey. Lin Yuan wanted to enhance the bronze X/legend spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, that Morbius had spirit locked. Lin Yuan walked to the side of the spirit pool and found that Blackie was leisurely eating the butterfly shell flowers at the bottom of the pool. After Blackie reached bronze, the butterfly shell flowers that Lin Yuan fed it had also increased by a grade. The butterfly shell flowers that Lin Yuan had fed Blackie were just low-grade butterfly shells that lived in the shallow sea and were carved from them. The butterfly shell flowers that Lin Yuan fed Blackie were high-grade butterfly shells that were produced in the deep sea and were carved from a small number of high-grade ones. Although it could not be said that high-grade butterfly shells were priceless in the market, they were still very expensive. Under normal circumstances, very few people would be willing to use high-grade deep-sea butterfly shells to let fays eat casually. After all, although the flower could stimulate the dragon species bloodline in the fae, the effect of stimulating the bloodline was mainly nurturing and auxiliary. However, the effect of activating the bloodline was mainly based on nurturing, and there wouldn't be any effect in the short term. This was also why Lin Yuan had been feeding Blackie so many butterfly shell flowers. However, when Blackie had stimulated its dragon species bloodline, it had used 3 drops of dragon species phase essence blood for the first time. The second time he planned to use the legend dragon's mouth orchid flowers. However, he did not feel that it was a waste for Blackie to eat the butterfly shell flower carved from the deep-sea butterfly shells. Because of the accumulation of the past few months, Lin Yuan could sense that the trace of dragon species bloodline hidden in the spirit gather goldfish's bodies was becoming more and more active after eating the butterfly shell flowers carved from the expensive deep-sea butterfly shells. However, if one stared at the spirit gather goldfish Blackie every day, they wouldn't be able to see it. However, if he were to look at it once every 1 or 2 months, he would still be able to see that faint dragon species phase pressure constantly accumulating in Blackie's body. It was as if it was waiting for a complete transformation. Lin Yuan looked at the huge black legend dragon's mouth orchid flower in his hand with great anticipation. Lin Yuan was not prepared to let Blackie immediately undergo a drastic transformation into a dragon species fae after eating this dragon's mouth orchid flower. However, this legend dragon's mouth orchid flower would definitely allow Blackie to comprehensively cleanse its bloodline and greatly strengthen its trace of dragon species fae bloodline. It might even completely suppress the fish's comprehended bloodline. It would allow the dragon species fae's bloodline to occupy the dominant position in Blackie's body. This was because Lin Yuan did not know the effect of the legend dragon's mouth orchid flower. In fact, Lin Yuan still placed the treasure of Blackie's evolution into a dragon species fae on the moment it evolved into a fantasy breed fae. Blackie sensed Lin Yuan's arrival and immediately swam to the side of the spirit pool. It used its black velvet peony-like tail to whip the spirit pool's surface, creating splashes as it greeted Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan watched as Blackie used its tail to whip the water. He felt that this spirit gather goldfish and the 3 dragon phoenix landscape carps greeted each other in the same way. Lin Yuan thought that if he were to lie at the side of the pool, he might get wet from the splashes from Blackie's whipping. At that moment, Lin Yuan fished out the 5 fortune ranches, which had evolved to bronze from the spirit pool. He also placed the female 5 fortune ranches, which Blackie had a good time with, in the water tank where the 3 mountain river eternal life carps were stored. This was the moment when Blackie would once again stimulate its dragon species bloodline. Today's second update, end of this chapter. Chapter 344. Lin Yuan had now completely emptied the spirit pool. At this moment only Blackie, the spirit gather goldfish, was swimming freely in the spirit pool. When Lin Yuan saw Blackie's joyful expression, he felt a slight headache. Although Blackie, the spirit gather goldfish, was considered an animal, its IQ was not much lower than that of the jasmine lily. Blackie might look like it understood humans, but it had a silly and cheerful personality. In fact, he was just a silly and cheerful person who seemed to understand everything. In fact, he only knew how to spit bubbles in the spirit pool when he had nothing to do. This was like a student who didn't know anything, but when the teacher was lecturing he would nod, ponder, and interact with the teacher with an expression of sudden enlightenment. In fact, in his mind he was thinking about something as simple as eating potato chips and drinking cola on a big bed. This made Lin Yuan overestimate Blackie's intelligence. Previously, Lin Yuan had always thought that there was something between Blackie and the female five-fortune Ranchu. But then he suddenly recalled that his spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, was also a female fish. Later, Lin Yuan realized that Blackie did not have any other feelings for the female five-fortune Ranchu. However, the size of the female five-fortune Ranchu was about the same as the spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie. The spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, treated the female five-fortune Ranchu as its playmate. At that moment, Lin Yuan issued an order to Blackie. Then he threw the black legend dragon's mouth orchid flower into the spirit pool. This was the moment when Blackie stimulated its dragon species bloodline transformation for the second time. Fish fays were not smart. Even high-grade fish fays were not very smart as long as they did not become myth breeds. This was also why there was a saying that fish only had 7 seconds of memory. However, if Blackie could evolve into a dragon species fay, its intelligence would increase by a level. When it became a dragon species fay, its intelligence would increase by a level. Blackie followed Lin Yuan's order and swam toward the legend dragon's mouth orchid flower. Just as Blackie swallowed the legend dragon's mouth orchid flower, Lin Yuan could feel the dragon species pressure in Blackie's body. Lin Yuan could feel Blackie's dragon species pressure, which had been accumulating power and waiting to be unleashed, erupting in an instant. Although Xiaohei was already a spirit-gather goldfish, it still had the appearance of a spirit siphon goldfish. However, the moment the dragon's might erupted, the spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, immediately sank to the bottom of the spirit pool under the intense pain. Then the spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, began to churn at the bottom of the spirit pool. He kept slamming his body against the walls of the spirit pool. The spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, hit the wall of the spiritual pool with great force. The spirit-gather goldfish Blackie's black scales were considered hard. It didn't suffer much damage when it hit the wall of the spirit pool for the first few times. However, under the unbearable pain, the spirit-gather goldfish slammed into the spirit pool's wall again and again. Slowly, the black scales on Blackie's body loosened. Even the fins and tail of the fish had been battered by the crazy collisions. Many parts of the spirit-gather goldfish, Xiaohei's fins and tail were already broken. Through this opening, Lin Yuan could even see the golden metal disc filled with energy ores and the deep-sea butterfly shell flowers at the bottom of the spirit pool. Although Blackie didn't have high intelligence, a contractor and Fei could sense each other's feelings and thoughts. Just like now, Lin Yuan could completely feel the pain that came from the depths of Blackie's soul. It was a process where all the cells in the body were destroyed and reborn under the stimulation of the bloodline. Lin Yuan naturally felt heartache for Blackie's pain. However, Lin Yuan also knew that it was useless for him to feel heartache. It couldn't reduce a trace of the pain that Blackie had to endure. The edge of a treasured sword was sharpened, and the fragrance of plum blossoms was gone. If a person wanted to learn knowledge and become the best person, they would need to work hard for thousands of days and nights. Moreover, Blackie's racial bloodline had undergone a qualitative transformation. The scarlet blood in Blackie's body flowed into the spirit pool from the broken scales. It was immediately broken down into spirit chi by the spirit pool and injected into the spirit lock spatial zone. Had it not been for Blackie's bulging eyes that were not damaged, Lin Yuan would never have recognized that this bloody fish fey in the spirit pool was actually Blackie. No matter what, Lin Yuan would never have recognized that this bloody fish fey in the spirit pool was actually Blackie. The spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, no longer had any scales on its body. It was using its softest flesh to hit the walls of the spirit pool. The mangled spirit-gather goldfish, Blackie, was still crazily hitting the spirit pool's wall to vent the intense pain that was surging all over its body. Each hit would definitely bring up a handful of captivating red blood. Lin Yuan quietly accompanied Blackie by the spirit pool and walked the most difficult path of a fish's life. For Blackie, the legendary dragon's mouth orchid would have been a great blessing if it had not been discovered by chance in the depths of the endless forest. Since it was a blessing, it had to endure no matter how hard it was. It was said that a golden unicorn was not a fish in a pond and would transform into a dragon when encountering a storm. At this moment, the legend dragon's mouth orchid was Blackie's storm. As Blackie's contractor, Lin Yuan had always been standing by the spirit pool to accompany Blackie. He silently observed the second transformation of the spirit siphon goldfish's dragon species bloodline after its first awakening into a spirit gather goldfish. Lin Yuan clenched his fist tightly. Watching his contracted phase growth and transformation was so painful, he felt heartache and blissful at the same time. Once this path was crossed, Blackie wouldn't have such huge bumps in the future. Blackie might still be a bloody mess, but the captivating red blood that flowed out slowly had a hint of gold. However, Blackie's bulb-like eyes seemed to have left Lin Yuan and were constantly squeezing toward the top of Blackie's head. The spot where Blackie's eyes used to be had a hint of gold. Furthermore, this gold color was constantly deepening. When the place where the eyes used to be had turned completely dark gold, the golden light that rose up from where the eyes used to be was completely dark gold. Blackie immediately quieted down and sank to the bottom of the spirit pool. It lay at the bottom of the spirit pool and didn't seem to have any strength at all. Lin Yuan observed carefully and realized that a thin layer of tough skin had already grown on the surface of Blackie's body. Then, the two big eyes on the top of Little Black's head, which had been separated from the spirit gather goldfish, finally formed two small horns that looked dark gold with black color. Third update button is sick. The latest update may be a little slow, but I guarantee 3 updates every day. End of this chapter. Chapter 345. Immediately after, Blackie's body was covered in black crystal-like scales with dark golden patterns. Layer by layer they grew on Blackie's body. Blackie's body was also constantly elongating while trembling violently. Previously, Blackie was only 50 centimeters long. Now the length of the spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, had doubled to 1 meter long. Blackie's body wasn't as round as before. Instead, it had become slender and powerful. However, the black peony flower-like tail didn't change. At that moment, the black peony flower-like tail wasn't as elegant as before. Instead, a layer of bone-like structure grew inside, supporting the tail completely. Right at this moment, in the spirit pool, a pair of dark golden eyes appeared where Little Black's eyes had previously been pushed to the top of its head, where the crystalline keratin had formed. It was said to be the finishing touch. Now that Lin Yuan saw Blackie's evolution process, he finally witnessed it. Previously, Blackie's round and protruding eyes were like 2 big light bulbs, making it look rather cute. But now Blackie's eyes were long and slender dragon eyes, which had the unique prestige and coldness of a worm species fae. After evolving at the bottom of the pool, Blackie had exhausted all its strength. The evolution just now was like going through the gates of hell for Blackie. However, Blackie knew that Lin Yuan had been accompanying it at the spirit pool. Blackie, who was at the bottom of the spirit pool, swung its tail and leaped out of the water, landing in Lin Yuan's embrace. Blackie was now 1 meter long, and its weight wasn't light. However, Lin Yuan, who had been a C-rank spirit chi professional for a period of time, had no problem carrying Blackie, which weighed 15 to 20 kilograms. The corners of Lin Yuan's mouth could not help but twitch when he felt Blackie's silly intimacy in his arms. The clothes that he had just changed out of after entering the spirit lock spatial zone were completely wet again. Lin Yuan used the spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, to circulate his spiritual power to sense Blackie's changes. Lin Yuan could clearly feel that Blackie's physique had undergone an earth-shattering improvement. At the same time, although the spirit gather goldfish, Blackie, was still dumb, its intelligence had improved greatly. Previously, Xiaohei was the kind of student who pretended to be knowledgeable. Now, Little Black belonged to the category of students who only knew a little. At that moment, Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check Blackie's attributes. He found that Little Black was no longer called a spirit gather goldfish, but a spirit attract ichthyosaur. Upon seeing this name, Lin Yuan's eyes shrank. He had never expected the legend dragon's mouth orchid to have such a powerful effect on stimulating the dragon species phase bloodline. At that moment, Blackie was no longer considered a fish fae. If Blackie, the spirit gather goldfish, activated its bloodline, it would be called a spirit-drawing dragonfish under True Data. In that case, Blackie's body was still dominated by the fish phase bloodline. However, Blackie's name under True Data was now spirit-drawing ichthyosaur. This meant that Blackie's bloodline was now dominated by a dragon species phase bloodline. It could even be said that there was not much of the fish phase bloodline left in its body. Lin Yuan was pleasantly surprised by such a discovery. This meant that when Blackie became a fantasy breed, it would evolve from a fish species fae to a dragon species fae. It was already a matter of time before it became a fantasy breed. At that time, Blackie would no longer be an ichthyosaur but a true flood dragon. Now, if he wanted Blackie to become a fantasy breed, what he lacked was a suitable willpower rune. However, Lin Yuan still did not feel like he could comprehend Blackie's willpower rune. Previously, when Endless Summer had used the Enlightenment Law rune to swear to become his protector, Lin Yuan had vaguely felt a trace of inexplicable comprehension in his mind. However, that comprehension was simply too faint, so Lin Yuan could not figure out what it was. Even if that comprehension was completely comprehended and formed into a willpower rune, Lin Yuan felt that this kind of comprehended willpower rune should not be suitable for Blackie. Therefore, he still had no clue how Blackie could become a fantasy breed. However, after Blackie stimulated the trace of dragon species bloodline hidden in its body and evolved into a spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Lin Yuan found that Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, was almost twice as fast as usual. After Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, evolved into a spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Lin Yuan found that Blackie's exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, was almost twice as fast as usual. After Blackie's Spirit Gather Goldfish evolved into a spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, its exclusive skill, Spirit Chi Imprint, had undergone obvious changes. Fey name: Spirit Drawing Ichthyosaur, Fey species, Ichthyosaur/Flood Dragon, Fey grade, Bronze 10/10, Fey type, Water, Fey quality, Legend abilities: Frowny Face Spirit Injection, restore a certain amount of spiritual power in one go and slowly recover the lost spiritual power. Exclusive skill: Frowny Face Spirit Chi Imprint. The spirit chi released by the body is not released into the environment but stored in the spirit chi imprint. It can also guide a small amount of spirit chi released by other dragon species phase that do not exceed the body's grade and inject it into the spirit chi imprint. The spirit chi imprint will be branded on the contractor, and the contractor can actively release the spirit chi stored in the spirit chi imprint. Upon seeing this change, Lin Yuan couldn't help but size up the spirit pool in the spirit lock spatial zone. From this change, Lin Yuan saw a very feasible direction. It had to be said that when Lin Yuan had first nurtured the elite spirit siphon goldfish in the spirit pool, those spirit siphon goldfish had been nurtured in a very short period of time, and they had indeed earned a lot of savings for Lin Yuan's initial stage. However, that was when Lin Yuan was just starting out. Now, these elite spirit siphon goldfish that were nurtured in the spirit lock spatial zone could bring Lin Yuan a negligible income. In fact, when comparing the elite spirit siphon goldfish and the silver usnias, the silver usnias were in higher demand. After all, the spirit siphon goldfish were just items that assisted in cultivation, while the usnias produced were necessities in life. Therefore, Lin Yuan had the intention of not using the spirit pool to nurture the elite spirit siphon goldfish and selling them in his purchase with no loss store. Lin Yuan had been providing elite spirit siphon goldfish to Zhou Jiesen's store. However, if Lin Yuan was willing to exchange the elite spirit siphon goldfish for silver usnias, Zhou Jiesen would probably jump for joy. Now that the spirit siphon ichthyosaur's exclusive skill, the spirit chi imprint, Lin Yuan felt that he could make good use of the spirit pool. Chapter 1, End of this chapter. Chapter 346. The spirit-drawing ichthyosaur could guide the spirit chi released by dragon species phase within a certain range into the spirit chi imprint. Even if it was only a trace, Lin Yuan had to strive for it. This was because every trace of spirit chi in the spirit chi imprint was Lin Yuan's absolute trump card. It could be said that there were almost no dragon species phase that could release spirit chi. Even if there were some precious dragon species phase that could release spirit chi, their size would not be small. Therefore, the most suitable phase for Lin Yuan were the eye spirit siphon goldfish with a trace of dragon species bloodline. Lin Yuan could nurture these eye spirit siphon goldfish with a trace of dragon species bloodline, just like how he had nurtured Blackie to evolve from a spirit siphon goldfish to a spirit gather goldfish. At that time, these eye spirit siphon goldfish would stimulate the trace of dragon species bloodline in their bodies. The spirit-drawing ichthyosaur could use its exclusive skill to increase the spirit chi in the spirit chi imprint faster. Lin Yuan carefully sensed the range of the spirit chi released by the spirit-drawing ichthyosaur's exclusive skill to guide other dragon species phase. He found that the range was actually very small, not even half the size of the spirit pool. However, Lin Yuan did not mind. As Blackie evolved into a fantasy breed, the range would get bigger and bigger. After Morbius grade increased, the spirit pool's area would also get bigger, just enough to satisfy Blackie's constantly expanding range. There were many colors of the eye spirit siphon goldfish, and the most common was red. However, Lin Yuan planned to choose black for all the eye spirit siphon goldfish that he would carefully nurture and activate their dragon species bloodline in the future. This way, the spirit pool in the spirit lock spatial zone would have a hint of the ink dragon pool. After Lin Yuan and Blackie got close for a while, Lin Yuan let Blackie nourish itself in the spirit pool. Although Blackie's bloodline had undergone a qualitative transformation, Lin Yuan and Blackie were close for a while. Lin Yuan let Blackie nourish itself in the spirit pool. Blackie's current mental state was not good. The pain it had just experienced would not disappear because of the transformation of its bloodline. Therefore, Blackie still needed some time to nourish itself before it could recover to its best state. Blackie's dragon species Fey bloodline was already in the dominant position, and it was not as powerful as Blackie. Therefore, when he nurtured Blackie in the future, he could feed it butterfly shell flowers carved from deep-sea butterfly shells to nourish its bloodline. He could also feed Blackie some dragon species Fey essence blood from time to time. He had not dared to feed little black dragon species essence blood because he was afraid that its dragon species bloodline would be too thin. He had rashly used a dragon species Fey's essence blood to strengthen Blackie. It was very likely that the trace of dragon species Fey bloodline in Blackie's body would not be able to suppress the energy in the essence blood. However, the dragon species Fey bloodline concentration in Blackie's body was already strong enough. Dragon species Fey's bloodlines were divided into ancient dragons and flood dragons. As for the ancient dragon species and the flood dragon species, no matter which bloodline evolved to a higher level, they could be called the main dragon species. Among the ancient dragon species and flood dragon species Feys, flood dragon species Feys were the rarest. Therefore, it was not easy for Lin Yuan to feed Blackie the flood dragon species Fey's essence blood that it could consume. Blackie might have reached legend quality, but it was still a bronze Fey after all. If there was a silver flood dragon species Fey's essence blood to feed Blackie, it would be the most suitable. However, most flood dragon species Fey's grades were relatively high. The spirit-drawing ichthyosaur, Blackie, was a complete accident. If not for the legend dragon's mouth orchid, the flood dragon species bloodline in Blackie's body would not be able to reach its current level. However, silver flood dragon species Fey's essence blood was also very rare. Where was Lin Yuan going to look for it? He could not possibly wait for the bronze/legend dragon's mouth orchid to bloom another dragon's mouth orchid 4 months later. He would nurture another silver flood dragon species Fey and use its essence blood to feed Blackie. Putting aside whether Lin Yuan could use the dragon's mouth orchid to nurture another silver flood dragon species Fey. Even if he could, Lin Yuan would not do so. Therefore, this silver flood dragon species Fey's essence blood became the 100 mid-grade strange flames that Lin Yuan had exchanged for with the 10 flower brocade pearls. It was his next target for leaks. Lin Yuan was about to store the wood weaving house centipede into the diamond Fey storage box and leave the spirit lock spatial zone when he discovered something. He did not know when this bronze/legend wood weaving house centipede had fought with the crane species Fey that had yet to fully develop its genetic model. It was the little gray fellow that was confronting it. Lin Yuan understood what was going on at a glance. He had been accompanying Blackie to purify its bloodline and had not noticed that the wood weaving house centipede had designs on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus. The phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree was obviously more delicious than the cinnabar sweet osmanthus for the wood weaving house centipede. However, the wood weaving house centipede did not dare to have designs on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree. Chimey, which was lying in the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's nest, was purifying its bloodline and improving its quality. Just the strange flames sealed in the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branches could make the bronze X/legend wood weaving house centipede feel a fatal danger. At that moment, among the 130 golden leaves sealed with mid-grade strange flames at the top of the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's treetop, the golden flames and more than 30 golden leaves had been absorbed by the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree and Chimey. However, the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree had released any mid-grade strange flames. They could burn the bronze X/legend wood weaving house centipede to ashes. Therefore, the wood weaving house centipede had set its sights on the cinnabar sweet osmanthus. However, the little gray fellow had long regarded the cinnabar sweet osmanthus as its nest. A little guy who had never felt warmth since he was born would risk his life to protect all the warmth he could feel. Therefore, the little gray fellow confronted the bronze X/legend wood weaving house centipede. The wood weaving house centipede was docile by nature, and the gold wind speed rapid antelope had been guarding it. Therefore, the wood weaving house centipede had not made any moves to attack. Although this little gray fellow looked big, it was only a normal I/normal Fae that had yet to fully develop its genetic model. Lin Yuan looked at this little fellow's fierce appearance and went forward to put the wood-weaving house centipede into the Fae storage box. When the little gray fellow saw that Lin Yuan had helped it chase away the bad guy, it trotted toward him. When the little gray fellow saw that Lin Yuan had helped it chase away the bad guy, it trotted toward him. It used its small head and neck to rub against Lin Yuan's palm. Lin Yuan rubbed the little gray fellow's head and said, "Be good, don't be afraid. Gray is the bravest." When he had left the spirit lock spatial zone last night, Lin Yuan had given this little fellow a name. When he had left the spirit lock spatial zone last night, Lin Yuan had given this little fellow a name. When Lin Yuan first saw the little fellow, its entire body was covered in dust. Lin Yuan thought that he might as well call it Gray. Second chapter, end of this chapter. Chapter 347. Gray listened to Lin Yuan's words as if it understood something. Although it did not know what Lin Yuan was talking about, this gray little fellow was extremely dependent on Lin Yuan, who had saved it. Even if Gray had not signed a contract with Lin Yuan yet, it could still clearly feel Lin Yuan's kindness and love. Lin Yuan placed Gray on the phoenix perching Chinese parasol tree's branch and played with it for a while. Then he said, "Gray, I'll come to see you again later. I'll bring you some tang fish to eat." Gray, I'll come to see you later. I'll bring you some tang fish to eat." He was also used to communicating with Fays the same way he treated his human friends. Lin Yuan was also used to communicating with Fays the same way he treated his human friends. It was also because of Lin Yuan's respectful way of communicating with Fays. In the 2 years since he had started raising Genius. Even if Genius's foundation was not good, after 2 years, Genius would be more intelligent than ordinary 100 questions beasts. Lin Yuan was not sure what species this gray little fellow was, but it was a crane species Fae after all. For crane species Fays, their favorite food was tang fish. This little fellow was now recovering its genetic model and growing its body. In addition to the huge and pure spiritual power in the spirit lock spatial zone, nutrition was also indispensable. After leaving the spirit lock spatial zone, Lin Yuan immediately went to change a set of clothes. Previously, the spirit-drawing dragonfish had jumped into Lin Yuan's arms and wet his clothes. Although his clothes were no longer so wet due to Lin Yuan's body temperature. It was really uncomfortable to wear wet clothes. After leaving the room, Lin Yuan saw a small basket at the door with Wen Yu's carefully written faction plan and suggestions. He picked up the plan and suggestions written by Wen Yu and read them carefully. Wen Yu, Lu Jie and Lin Yuan had lived together in Lin Yuan's mansion. Now there were Hu Quan, the mother of bloodbath and endless summer. The people living in Lin Yuan's mansion included young men, young women, middle-aged men, plants and insects. In a big family, respecting each other's privacy was the minimum respect and care. Therefore, when entering each other's rooms, they would knock on the door. If no one answered after knocking, they would put the prepared things in the basket at the door. The baskets at the door were carved by Hu Quan from all kinds of completely jade-textured wood, and the remaining large pieces were pieced together skillfully. Each basket made of various jade-textured wood fragments was like an exquisite work of art. Lin Yuan stood at the door and looked at Wen Yusin's development and plan for the faction. Just like that, he watched for an entire hour. The more Lin Yuan watched, the more he realized that she had abandoned her previous sense of superiority when analyzing the major factions. Therefore, he had a very clear analysis of the major forces. Back then, when they came out of the private auction of the King-class powerhouse team, Lin Fan had been stunned for a while. From Gao Feng's words, Wen Yu knew that Gao Feng came from the Gao family in Wind Mist City. From then on, he knew that she knew all the major factions very well. Now, it seemed that Wen Yu's understanding of the major forces could no longer be described as understanding. According to the 7 to 8 thick pages of analysis on the various forces, Wang Chang's expression changed drastically. For each force, Wen Yu clearly summarized the advantages and disadvantages of each force in one sentence. One could say that Wen Yu was a walking encyclopedia of the various major powers. Wen Yu's expertise happened to be Lin Yuan's weakness. It could be said that Wen Yu's ability just made up for Lin Yuan's shortcomings. After Lin Yuan finished reading Wen Yu's private faction development and plan, he walked up the golden bell-wood spiral staircase and arrived at Wen Yu's door. Soon, Wen Yu pushed open the door and walked out. She saw that it was Lin Yuan and that he was holding the private faction development and suggestions that she had written for the second time. When he saw that it was Lin Yuan and that he was holding the proposal for the development of his faction, which he had written for the second time. "Young master, what do you think of what I wrote this time?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan revealed a sunny smile on his face and replied, "Young master, what do you think of what I wrote this time?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan revealed a sunny smile on his face and replied, "It's great this time. Your understanding of other factions happens to be in the direction that I'm not good at." Upon hearing that, Wen Yu's face also bloomed with a heartfelt smile. At that moment, Wen Yu suddenly felt that she could finally help Lin Yuan. Hu Quan had already taken a nap and had his liver replenished. After mending his liver, Hu Quan had already started making all kinds of exquisite things downstairs. Lin Yuan built his faction on Star Web, although he did not plan to do so in the outside world. However, he still had to design the faction's internal space. However, he was not in a hurry to design the faction's internal space. He thought about giving the Bronze X/Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede to Hu Quan in a few days. After letting Hu Quan contract this Bronze X/Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede and promote it to a fantasy breed, the Wood Weaving House Centipede became a fantasy breed. It would undoubtedly be much more convenient for Hu Quan to construct the internal space of his private organization. Lin Yuan had previously agreed to give Hu Quan the Bronze/Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede within 10 days. He had completed the enhancement of the Bronze/Legend Wood Weaving House Centipede in just a few hours. However, he was not in a hurry to give it to Hu Quan. Lin Yuan planned to give the 3 Silver/Legend Mountain River Eternal Life Carps to Hu Quan after giving them to the Wood Weaving House Centipede. Then he placed the 3 Mountain River Eternal Life Carps into the Red Sandalwood Longevity Fish Tank. The Red Sandalwood Longevity Fish Tank was paired with all kinds of phase as an auspicious scene, and one had to be able to distinguish the priority. In the past, the Bronze/Epic Dragon Phoenix Landscape Carps were the masters. Now, the masters were replaced by the Silver/Legend Mountain River Eternal Life Carps. However, the 99 Lustrous Winged Butterflies, 99 Spirit-Containing Hibiscuses, and 99 Five Fortune Ranches were still only at Bronze/Flawless. Therefore, these secondary spiritual physicists would also receive a boost in strength. As an auspicious scene, only complementing each other could reflect the harmonious aura within. Otherwise, this auspicious scene would seem a little top-heavy. The Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer also returned when the sky was getting dark. The Mother of Bloodbath and Endless Summer each carried big and small bags. Obviously, they had just returned from the mall. However, Endless Summer's bags were mostly filled with spirit accessories and clothing. The Mother of Bloodbath's bags were filled with all kinds of snacks and pastries. During dinner, everyone was more happy. On the contrary, the Mother of Bloodbath, which had brought back all kinds of delicacies and snacks, looked a little depressed. During the meal, the Mother of Bloodbath had already said no less than 10 times that Lu Jie's cooking was still the best. Lin Yuan could not help but think. If he wanted to get a spider's approval, he had to first get the approval of the spider's stomach. Third update, end of this chapter. That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.